Tuesday and Friday from the Boston Public Library. Good morning, Jim.
And good morning, Marjorie. And of course, we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. So yesterday, when Marjorie and I were commenting on the January 6th hearings, it was day 2 yesterday. I'm sure you just heard day 3 tomorrow is postponed to a date to be determined. There will be a hearing on Thursday. We took a lot of heat via text message, and I think a couple of callers too, for our apparently extremely pessimistic take on the precarious state of our democracy and what the hearings themselves might bring. So here's some of the texts. Y'all are flooding the airwaves with populist nihilism. Nihilism? How do you pronounce nihilism?
I think it's nihilism. I'm not sure.
Cynicism is a choice. Stop feeding it. And I would ask that you stop going on and on about how the Democrats are going to lose everything in the midterms. Please try to be more positive. Well, Josh from Jamaica Plain, Brendan in Hopkinton, and Judy in Newburyport, now is your chance. We have a bipartisan gun deal. Hopefully it'll survive, something that may not check all the boxes, but is arguably better than anything we've had in years. We have what seems like a nonpartisan, accurate accounting of an historic act of political violence that threatens our democracy. Now, both of these things are inarguably good. Of course, I'm not going to mention the state of the stock market or inflation or climate or war or voting rights or anti-LGBTQ animus because we're trying to stay positive. We want to hear from you about how you're feeling, and feel free to chastise Marjorie at least. You can maybe chastise me if you want to, for our relentless negativism. Give us a buzz or a text, 877-301-8970. Again, that's 877-301-8970, or you can tweet us at BOS Public Radio.
I just want to add a text we got this morning, Jim.
What'd they say?
To us. To hell with this country. No one, expletive deleted, cares. Not listening. Expletive deleted, you all.
Really?
That was enough.
You know who's that from? One of our producers,
I don't know.
Actually. It was.
And before I get more texts about asking people why I laugh when things are serious and upsetting, it's because, like I said, I'd rather laugh than cry, so I am laughing.
877-301-8970. And also, seriousness, about the hearings themselves. One, as I've said repeatedly, I think it's great if nothing were to come of this other than there being an historical record of an attempt by a former president, or well then a president, to overthrow the democracy and the democratic results of an election. That is a good thing. But when you read this morning, we're going to discuss this with Juliette and with John King from CNN later in the day, the chair of the committee is quoted as saying, we are not going to make a referral to the Justice Department even if we think crimes were committed by the former president? What's that about?
One of the problems with congressional hearings in general, and this one as well, is that Democrats overpromise, and they should never have opened with 15 minutes of Benny Thompson. You were waiting for the shock and awe thing that they talked about. Liz Cheney was really good. So you just say to Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney's better. I mean, deal with your issues. It's like when they have these hearings and they all ask these inane questions. I mean, hardly anybody.
They haven't done that in this hearing at all.
They have not done that
really
in this
carefully
hearing.
Choreographed.
But he heard it, and I heard him in an NPR interview, basically saying that they hadn't proven anything, and he was kind of like, really? You're having people testify about, I suppose you could say in a court of law, is that proven beyond a reasonable doubt? But people talked about things they'd seen and witnessed firsthand, and multiple people said they'd seen and witnessed the same things over and over again. So
can I tell you something,
he just
by the
wasn't
way?
He's not a good spokesman,
okay.
And he should have stepped aside.
One, I am totally sick of your negative attitude.
Okay.
That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, I'm going to be positive, Marjorie, in the spirit of the texters and some of the callers yesterday. I have concluded that despite the direction we're going on climate change, the Earth will not perish for at least another 40 or 50 years, so our children will be fine. 877-301-8970. We're serious, by the way. If you can paint a positive picture out of January 6th, out of what's happening in the gun debate, there is a bipartisan, at least broad agreement. They're trying to draft the language now. We don't want to be negative. We'd like to see the light at the end of that proverbial you-know-what, but we don't see it. And if you do, please join us. 877-301-8970.
I do think there is something positive if they do get somewhere on the guns. Chris Murphy, who's the senator from Connecticut, who's been relentless. I mean, his district was Sandy Hook when he was a congressman, and now he's a senator representing the whole state. Everybody knows about all the children that were killed, those little 6- and 7-year-olds in Sandy Hook. It's a tiny opening, and it's something, and it's something is better than nothing. So it's nice to see at least the beginning of this kind of
Well,
discussion.
can I tell you why I'm not quite there yet, but I'm totally open to be convinced? You're right. It is an opening, and it hopefully creates an opportunity for more. My fear is that for the next decade, the Republicans use this to show they're not immovable on gun stuff. And while they didn't do any of the really critical things, one might argue, and we'll talk more about it later, that the boyfriend loophole and the checking the juvenile and mental health records of 18 and 21-year-olds before they can buy a weapon, they are no doubt good. But the major things that had to be done aren't done, and now the Republicans are able to say, don't tell us we're an obstacle to a deal. We were part of a
But they're an
bipartisan
obstacle
deal on guns.
to the deals that would matter, and there's no reason to think that these massacres are not going to continue. They are going to continue. So if the reasons the massacres continue is because of high-capacity magazines and weapons of war, as people are now calling these assault weapons, I think there will be at some point where it sounds
Why isn't it this point after Uvalde and Buffalo? If there's going to be some point, why is that point not right now? If you can't do it now, what's going to happen? What are there going to be 10 mass murders in a week rather than 2?
I think we could be heading in that direction, actually.
I hope that's. I mean, I hope we're not
and
heading in that direction. I hope there will be more progress.
The reason I'm not optimistic is I always talk about the two media worlds. I mean, the millions of people listen to very conservative radio, and watch very conservative TV, and they have very conservative feeds on their Facebook pages because of the algorithms that keep sending that kind of stuff. There was a great example once before about two neutral people that started on Facebook. One said something nice about Biden. Suddenly they were deluged with the most extreme kind of far left stuff because they decided they were a person that could be susceptible to that. One person said something nice about Trump, and before you knew it, they were down this rabbit hole of these crazy conspiracy theories. And I think that's what happened in these hearings. You had people like Dan Bongino, he replaced Rush Limbaugh, he's got millions of listeners, trashing them. You get Tucker Carlson basically lying about them, and he's the biggest guy on television, and that stuff gets replicated in that echo chamber. So that's why I'm not that encouraged about January 6th hearings, although I think they were good. They were good. I didn't like Benny Thompson, but I thought overall they were good.
Okay, enough with the Benny Thompson opening. My God.
Well, 20 million people. It's not huge.
No, it's pretty big.
But it's pretty big.
877-301-8970. Scott in South Boston, you are first. Hi.
Hi, it's so good to be on with you guys. I'm your biggest fan in Southie.
Oh, thank you.
I wanted to call because I think that you guys absolutely need to keep up the heat on public officials and the institutions and media that, have been feeding the confirmation bias and fueling polarization in the country. I think where we need to maybe give a little bit more grace is on the individual constituents. We are Americans. We live in a wonderfully prosperous, free society, but we are victim to an echo chamber of confirmation bias that, I want critical thinkers like you to continue to put the pressure on and to continue scrutinizing, because I don't believe that they're being held accountable. Tucker Carlson and Fox News, it really just knocks you down.
Yeah.
Scott, we'll try to keep doing it, and thanks for being kind to us. We really appreciate it. Scott, thanks so much for your call. 877-301-8970. I'm going to try to read every positive text I can find. Here's one out of Hancock, New Hampshire. What happens in Hancock, New Hampshire, Marjorie?
Oh, we have the little Peep diorama.
Right.
People know Peeps, those little horrible Easter candies, which Jim likes, but
I hate them.
Oh, you do? Okay, I wasn't sure,
so
Jim.
Here's what someone from Hancock says. The good news is that someday those politicians will croak, probably before the earth dies. Now that's a positive message.
Well,
I think.
that's the David Hogg, the kid he's a young man, I should say, that survived in Parkland, that terrible massacre that was the Parkland school. He said that's the only hope, is that old people like us, Jim, have to die off.
He said it to me as he's looking at me.
So the 20-somethings
Our hope is that you people
over.
die. Roy, he didn't mean it as harshly. He meant it. It may take that long. But by the way, he has become, and I admire him hugely, an incrementalist too. His attitude is something is better than nothing. And frankly, he is much closer to this issue than I will ever be.
I think that's reasonable, Jim. I think something is better
No,
than
it is
nothing.
not.
Is
If
it not?
excuse me,
Okay.
it is not. If it, as I say, if it provides an opportunity for Republicans to never do anything else, and I do think it provides them cover. I hope I'm wrong. Roy in a car. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show, Roy. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to comment that all the negativism about the upcoming election and the Democrats' chances, I think you really got to keep in mind, remember how there's always an October surprise. We all thought things were going differently before Comey's bomb, and there's no sense pushing any panic buttons until we at least get to late October, and maybe the bomb will be in our direction this time.
That's true. That's an optimistic way to look at things. You were talking before about some.
Wait, go ahead, Roy. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so sit back, relax, and just keep working. We got to do the work to make it happen, but wouldn't worry about anything till we get way down the road here.
Well, that's actually a good attitude. You know what I'm going to do in furtherance of that? When the abortion decision comes down in the next few days, I'm not going to turn on the TV. That's what I'm going to do. And Roy, thanks for the. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. It's a bad time. By the way, do you know, even though we intellectually know there's going to be an abortion decision between now and the end of the month, it could be as early as tomorrow, who knows? Does it not feel surreal? I mean, intellectually, we all know what the leaked Alito decision said. The
Right.
conventional wisdom from experts on constitutional law in the Supreme Court is, it's probably, I mean, Carol Rose, I was not on that day. I heard her say to you, it'll be slightly narrower, but still horrible. Does it not feel surreal? Isn't there a part of you that is in semi-denial, even though intellectually you know?
About the state of the United
no,
States of America?
about the abortion decision. There is in me. I mean, I get it intellectually. I think I sort of still can't believe that 5 people, hopefully not 6, but
Yeah.
5 is bad enough, are going to repeal the right to an abortion in the United States
I
of
know.
America.
It does seem surreal, but we're taking a very backward turn. I mean, Ron DeSantis, who if President Donald Trump doesn't become the president again in 2024, Ron DeSantis from governor is soon to be his prime competitor, or even
I agree.
the front runner.
Yeah.
And now, I guess I don't think that there's a big, huge problem that most of us worrying about who attends drag shows. I mean, I don't think there are many kids going to drag shows.
Oh, Ron DeSantis does.
But this is what he's doing now, that he's going to order Child Protective Services to investigate parents who take children to drag shows. I think that is really the top of the issue.
It is.
when
It
you
is.
look at what Americans are concerned about. But look at what this guy is doing. Kids are gay, kids are trans. It's a very difficult situation to be in for a lot of kids, especially if their parents are not supportive. And this is his latest idea to send. This would be like sending DCF people off to investigate someone who may have taken their kid to a trans show. Maybe they didn't even realize what it was.
No, I'm totally with you. By the way, here's a positive text.
What?
Tom, formerly from Medford, he said, on the bright side, at least the Celtics played well the last couple of games. Maybe not.
Oh,
Ken
Jim,
and
did you read the one, the person who texted and said they were glad to see you found an iron for your shirt today?
No, I did?
I
no,
think they
actually,
were being sarcastic.
No, they did not. I just came back from the cleaners. I never take anything to the cleaners. I hope they're serious. This is a rare moment when I
Okay.
do not have wrinkles in my clothing. I hope thank you is the appropriate. Cost me like $5 for this. Ken in Templeton, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show, Ken. Hi.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I think some of the animosity that you may be getting from what people perceive as negativity is that you're just being rational and logical.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned, though, that it may also deliver a fait accompli to the Republicans in the sense that if, Democrats think that the game is already over, then why even show up to vote? Why go to protest? Why do that kind of thing? I was one of those people that was wrong about Kiev. I thought that Kiev would fall, within days of Russia's
Yeah,
So did I.
invasion.
we all
Yeah.
did, I think.
And yet, there they are. So God bless them. And I guess that's my only point, that never give up hope.
Well, Ken, let me tell you somebody who was arguing the opposite of what you worry that we're leading to, meaning it's so hopeless, why bother to vote? Andrea Cabral, when she called in yesterday to do her analysis of the hearings, and she's a pretty pessimistic soul, felt really good about the presentation, and she went on to say, this is your, or was it Michael, I'm not sure who's that. One of our guests yesterday made the case that if you are as unhappy about the state of affairs as Marjorie and I are, and I think we're not alone despite some of the texters and callers, then the answer is to vote. It's not to hide out in your house and separate yourself from the political game. It's to make sure you vote, and I hope people do. Ken, thanks for the call.
We also talked to Michael Curry about African Americans keeping hope alive through all these decades and decades of just horrible decisions from the courts, basically affirming racism in the United States of America. And look at. I mean, not to Martin Luther King, the most famous person that talked about hope. I mean, pretty hard to keep hope alive in the context of what African Americans have gone through, and they've managed to do it. So maybe we should just suck it up, Jim, and be a little bit more courageous.
Well,
John,
here's the here's the text. It nailed it. Guns, climate, hate. It's all hopeless unless the Celtics win. So that would undo a lot of the damage that's being done.
it would be good. We're going to talk to Trenni Kusnierek about how that. She picked the Warriors in 6.
She did?
Yes, she did.
Well, that's too bad.
That could mean it's over for the Celtics already. I hope she's wrong. John from Groveland. What do you think, John?
Hey, John, welcome.
Well, I was saying to the producer, I'm in an interesting position. I'm a Republican who you guys don't like, and yet the Trump people don't think I am a Republican. So I'm in a weird place. But
Hey, John, I didn't know I didn't like you. I don't even know who you are yet.
I think a lot of us like moderate Republicans, John. We may have even voted for moderate Republicans. We got one running the state of Massachusetts. He's a Republican.
But
right?
you essentially are a man without a country. Is that your point?
Sometimes I think I have a different perspective. And
What is it?
I know a lot of folks who bought into the election was fixed. And I think these hearings make it more and more difficult for them to maintain
I agree.
that policy.
I agree.
But I'll say this about politics. I think Nancy Pelosi made an enormous mistake in deciding that she would pick the Republicans to be on the committee. I think from an objective perspective, it kind of looks like the deck was stacked. That having been said, I think there is a value to this. It might take longer for the public opinion to turn the way you would or I would like it to go. But I think don't be too pessimistic.
John, can I interrupt you and say I ordinarily would agree with you about what you call the stacked deck. The problem was when she wasn't, quote, stacking the deck, Kevin McCarthy was picking people like Jim Jordan, who is a committed big lie spreader. So do you have somebody on the committee who not only is going to leak every single piece of information during your investigation, and there will never be, there is no fact about January 6th that Jim Jordan has ever been friendly to. He is a total deceitful Trump sycophant. I mean, that's the problem. So I think, John, in normal circumstances, you're right. It is better to let the Republicans pick their representatives on a Democratic-dominated committee, but McCarthy showed his hand, and I think it was untenable. But, John, thank you kindly for your call. Please call us again soon.
Mark Levin is another big radio guy,
Sure.
conservative radio guy, got tons and tons of listeners. Called these, the hearings a sham, a disgrace, the mob is in control, outrageous attack on the system, appalling, blah, 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 blah. This is what people were listening to. And Carlson, who is the biggest guy on Fox, was saying that the people on the committee were lying. And he said, we hate seeing vandalism. We didn't think it was an insurrection, though, because there were not one person in the crowd that day was found to be carrying a firearm. Our staff double-checked it just before we went on the air, because I thought people in the crowd had been found to be carrying firearms. Indeed, they were. Several defendants who police say were found to have brought firearms, and they were charged with having firearms in the Capitol. So he's the guy that lies. But again, he's very influential and he's very powerful. We're talking about being an optimist instead of a pessimist. Jim and I apparently were too pessimistic for some of our listeners, so we're ready to be chastised here on Boston Public Radio. The number is 877-301-8970. You can call us or text us at that number. You're listening to us from the Boston Public Library. This is 89.7 GBH.
Worcester has been attracting interest from developers over the past several years. Property values are up, and so are rents. but some longtime residents can't afford to pay more.
This is my home. Everything I need is just right around here, and I've like 5 doctors that are close. And to lose it, I don't know where I would go.
I'm Sam Turkin, the latest in our series Priced Out, the fight for housing in Massachusetts, Thursday on GBH's Morning Edition.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the British International School of Boston, offering a global learning experience through collaborations with MIT, the Juilliard School, and UNICEF. Spaces available for the fall. Learn more at bisboston.org. And Lexus Broadway in Boston, presenting Wicked, returning to the Citizens Bank Opera House June 8th through July 24th. Ticket information and availability online at lexusbroadwayinboston.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, as we are every Tuesday and Friday, and we're streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just joining us, we got a lot of feedback yesterday on text, a couple of calls too, saying we were being far too negative about the state of affairs in our democracy. So this is an opportunity for people to text and call and correct us in terms of what we are missing. And the number is 877-301-8970 to text or call. You can tweet at BOS Public Radio. Let me read a couple of really positive texts.
Yep.
Sarah, this is in the spirit,
I love this one.
of Cy Montgomery. I've moved 4 turtles out of the road this week. Do small things that make you feel like you have an ounce of control over some circumstance. That's great.
That
and
is
here's a
great.
beautiful positive note from
Yep.
Susan Framingham. She writes, positive note, I'm positive things suck. So that is, it's a word I usually don't say on the air, but
Okay.
it is a positive note. Thank you for that, Suze.
Jim reminded me, there was a lot of great sound from yesterday's hearings, but one of them came from the former Attorney General Bill Barr. He's the guy that misrepresented the Mueller report, so I was never a big fan of his. But in any case, he seems to have come to Jesus post the January 6th.
Or he can't find a job, one of
Or
the
he can't
two.
find a job. Actually, he quit before January 6th. But here he is talking about, you may remember that conservatives were blasting these Dominion voting machines over and over again, and Dominion sued. Here's the former AG telling former President Trump that his allegations of widespread voter fraud were not founded on reality, including what he said about Dominion voting machines.
I specifically raised the Dominion voting machines, which I found to be among the most disturbing allegations, disturbing in the sense that I saw absolutely zero basis for the allegations, but they were made in such a sensational way that they obviously were influencing a lot of people, members of the public, that there was this systemic corruption in the system and that their votes didn't count and that these machines controlled by somebody else were actually determining it, which was complete nonsense. And it was being laid out there. And I told them that it was crazy stuff and they were wasting their time on that. And it was doing a grave disservice to the country.
That was a pretty important moment. I would agree.
Yeah,
Big
that was a
deal.
pretty important movement. And we have a
Probably
text.
going to be used in litigation. Was Dominion suing? Is it Fox News or
Fox News,
for $1 billion?
and they sued the other one, the OAN or America's
One
News
American
Channel,
Network,
or whatever.
yeah.
They sued them as well. I think this texter is right.
What's that?
She said, "Please correct the often misstated record that Pelosi and the Republicans. She didn't ban all of McCarthy's picks. She only banned a couple of them, including Jim Jordan that you mentioned.
Sure.
McCarthy decided not to put the remaining unbanned ones on, preferring not to have any Republican participants, and then Pelosi put on Cheney and Kinzinger." I think that texter is right.
I think that's right. Shannon in Watertown, thank you for your call. Welcome to the show. Hello.
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 I just wanted to make a comment here that I have a tendency to be pessimistic about the state of affairs of our country as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a danger in being pessimistic, that we can become numb and unfazed to things going on when we really need to remain outraged. I mean, the potential overturn of Roe, war in Ukraine, the gun violence, and then, the January 6th insurrection, just to name a few things, we should all feel really strongly about. And I think we just need to remember and look to the kids of our nation who are organizing school walkouts on guns and LGBT rights and climate change.
You're right.
And we need to remain angry and engaged. And pessimistic is fine, I think, if we remember that we need to fight against all of these things. for
Nicely
a better
put.
society for all of us.
Good, well put,
Well,
Shannon. Thanks.
Shannon, I would say that you are outraged 24 hours a day, Jim.
I'm pessimistic and outraged. I am both of those
So
things.
you've got it all going on.
Shannon, that was a wonderful point. And you can be both things, I hope.
But-
and thanks for the call.
And Shannon's point, other people have made in terms of doing something in your own community. It matters to get involved in your own community. It does matter to have some kind of role. Although now, of course, if you get involved in your own community, you get involved in the elections. You may be putting your life in your hands based on what's happened to people.
Well, I am, by the way, I'm active in my own community. I go home right after the show, sit on my couch, catatonically until I have to get up the next day and come back to the radio and talk about the state of the world. 877-301-8970. By the way, that turtle thing and what you said are really true. When you are feeling like everything is out of your control, the best thing to do is do something good that is within your control. And people may have been laughing at that woman that talked about moving the 4 turtles, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing that was an incredibly satisfying, life-saving kind of act. So good for her.
Here's Paul from Worcester.
What do you say?
I'm positive on 2 things, he
Okay.
says. I'm really tired of hearing things like Joe Manchin is showing signs of working with the party when we know he won't, and the DOJ has no choice but to indict Trump, which they won't. And new gun laws aren't done yet, and nothing will happen in the end. So I'm positive that the Democrats will blow it, and Trump will be president in 2024.
Well, he basically said, I don't know if you saw, he wrote a 12-page response to the
Oh, yes, he did.
yesterday's hearing, and he didn't say the words precisely, he pretty much declared his candidacy for the office in 2024. Let's go to Sturbridge. Mickey, you're on Boston Public Radio. Appreciate your call. Hi.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I want to talk about the fact that Trump has to be indicted. And I'll go back first to Ford pardoning Nixon, which was
Right.
a big mistake.
Big mistake.
But now the crimes are so much more severe. It looks like Nixon jaywalked. And if he doesn't get indicted on a multiple crimes that we already know about, then the president is being, he might not get convicted. I understand that. But if he doesn't get indicted, the precedent now being set would be like, well, I guess if a president commits murder in the future, yeah, we'll indict him for that. I mean, it has to be done because this will repeat itself. There is no doubt about it.
Mickey, can I tell
and it might
you,
get worse.
you make my heart sing. I am totally of the view that you are. It is hard to imagine a president engaging in more, to quote Benny Thompson, more seditious behavior. If this president is allowed to remain free, or at least not challenged criminally based upon what we know, and we haven't talked much about that infamous phone call to the Secretary of State of Georgia, which in my opinion in and of itself makes the case against him, then it's a license for any president in the future to do any damn thing he or she wants, citing the precedent of the non-prosecution of this guy. So I am totally and completely with you if the case can be made that he committed crimes. And
Well,
as a
you know-
layperson, I think the case has been made. Mickey, thanks for the call.
Let me repeat what I've said before. Indict him anyway. You may not,
This is your
prosecutors
cardinal
are
law
loath
position, yeah.
to not indict people if they don't think they have everything, every T crossed and every I dotted. Indict him anyway. It really matters. If Tom
What do you
Riley,
think happens to to the 74 million people who voted for Trump if their leader is
indicted and he wins,
and acquitted?
I think it's better than not indicting him, because not indicting him
maybe you're
means, hey, all this stuff that came out, all these crimes and all this misbehavior that came out, it's okay. That's what Merrick Garland is saying.
Yeah, maybe
he's saying
you're
it's
right.
okay. And the thing about cardinal law,
well, he hasn't said. We don't know yet if he's where he's going to go here. We don't know what he's doing.
We don't know, and he
Yes.
may do it. But what I'm saying, if he doesn't indict him, that's
doesn't,
what
I
he's
see.
saying.
Yep.
And the thing about cardinal law, if Tom Riley had indicted him 20 years ago, then the other bishops who have continued to cover up for these pedophiles for 20 years would not be doing it. Now, I'm not saying that sexual harassment and assaults on women is going to stop, but I think the sexual harassers of America, after they saw people like, what's his name, the Me Too guy, the movie producer,
Harvey
Weinstein, go to jail, I think that may have slowed some people down.
Okay, so we're out of time. Can you do me a large
Yes,
favor?
I'll do you a large favor.
During the break, is
Yep.
it possible, if you're going over anyway, that you could get me a cup of coffee? Is that possible? Because The reason I'm even asking
Why
that,
are you asking me
Marjorie,
that, Jim?
Zoe's about to give you something. I want you to take a look at. Could you please look at it? Well, it's a mug.
Oh, my God.
Well, this is radio. What's on the mug?
Oh, my God.
What's on the mug?
Secretariat at the Belmont Stakes.
Read the
is
other
on
side of the mug.
It says Boston Public Radio, 0 days since last Secretariat mentioned.
Exactly.
He is moving like a tremendous machine.
I want you to know that Zoe and our staff.
Who made this mug?
Zoe and our staff. It is a limited edition. There are only 10 of them made to honor Marjorie's commitment to the greatest horse and the greatest movie ever made, Secretariat.
Well, it was the greatest horse ever made, not necessarily the greatest movie.
I'll take
but
my
it's sort of-
coffee.
you know what?
I'll take my coffee and my Secretariat mug,
Thank you.
please.
And you know what?
What?
If you're feeling bummed out, watch Secretariat
Here it
10
goes.
times in a
Here
row,
we
and
go.
you feel much better. Coming up,
Thank
Sports
you,
Authority.
Zoe, and our team. It was a wonderful act of kindness.
Yes, that was wonderful. Thank you very, very much.
By the way, they're $1,000 a pop. Donate to GBH if you want one of the 10 of them, and we'll sell you one.
Coming up, Sports Authority Trenni Kusnierek is here to discuss the Celtics' loss and whether they can pull this off when they face again the Golden State Warriors. You're listening to Boston Public Radio.
Next time on The World, a dystopian novel by an Indian-American author. Her hero rises from India's lowest caste to become a tech giant who changes the world. Not all for the better.
And it feels to me like every time we create a new system of government, we just re-embed those class hierarchies in the new systems that we create.
The author of The Immortal King Rao, plus the news on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Boston Children's Hospital, ranked the nation's #1 children's hospital by U.S. News and World Report, where families from Massachusetts and the world come for answers. bostonchildrens.org/answers. And Picasso, helping people buy and own a second home by bringing buyers together for co-ownership in an LLC. Picasso manages the home while clients own it. Information and current listings at pacaso.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are live at the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. And I am, excuse me for a minute, taking a sip of coffee from my new Secretariat mug. People may know that there was not a good outcome in the Celtics-Warriors game last night. Here's a little bit of sound.
It's not going to be easy, and things are not going to go your way all night long. Wiggins drives on Williams, flips it up and in. 24 for Andrew Wiggins. 1:58 remaining. The Warriors, the championship DNA shows up.
Oh, well. Joining us to discuss the Celtics loss and what lies ahead, because there could be 2 more games, is NBC Sports Authority and BPR contributor Trenni Kusnierek. Hi there, Trenni.
Hi, guys. What's up?
Now, Trenni Kusnierek, I believe you were predicting the Warriors in 6.
Is that
and that
true?
means
I did.
it's all over
That's
for the
too bad.
Celtics.
Well, I did, and then I got I got hoodwinked. And last week on my show, I was like, after Game 3, and after the way that I saw the Celtics really battle and be in it in Game 1 and like really Game 2, but after Games 1 and 3, I was like, they are so much better than the Warriors. So I brought out this green T-shirt on my show that said "Believe in Boston," and I was like, Celtics in 6. They're gonna win it at home next Thursday. You know what? Women's intuition, ladies, don't ever deny it. My first instinct was correct. This team was going to fall apart against the championship DNA Warriors, which I didn't even know that was a thing. I'd like to have my DNA tested to see if I have it. My biggest fears about the Celtics have come true in the last 2 games, where they're just they are so inconsistent. So inconsistent. They're inconsistent within games. They're inconsistent from game to game. Like, they played out of their minds in Game 3, and I thought, you know what? They're finally going to turn that corner. They're going to come out in Game 4. They're going to put it to the Warriors. They're going to go up 3 games to 2. They're going to win 2 games at home for the first time, back-to-back, for the first time this postseason, and they're going to have 3 chances to close this out and win the title. And then they completely flopped and fell apart. Jason Tatum has been, I don't want to say non-existent, but he certainly has not played like a first-team All-NBA. Jaylen Brown, who was good, looked atrocious last night. Marcus Smart chucks up way too many threes, like hero
why does
ball,
he do
ISO ball,
that?
because it's like they start to think that there's no other way. It's almost like they forget. Wow, every time we win, it's because our ball movement is good and we take care of the ball and we kind of slow the pace. And the minute things start to unravel, they panic. Like they looked scared and overwhelmed in the first quarter of the game yesterday. They looked great in the third quarter, but as Golden State started to make a push in the second half of that third quarter, the Celtics kind of, after they took the lead 58-55, I think it was, on an Al Horford three, after that, instead of like riding that momentum, I believe that Golden State came down and hit a shot, maybe another Klay Thompson three to tie it or a two. And then it was just sort of the wheels came off again.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's clear to me they have not learned how to win.
Okay, can I be positive? Because we were just criticized for being negative. I have to say, this may not please Celtics fans. I didn't realize how great Steph Curry was.
Oh, my God.
And by the way, he missed all his three-point shots last night. Okay, fine.
You didn't even want to know the numbers, by the way. After he misses a whole bunch of threes, like he goes insane in his next game. So look out, Celtics.
But let me tell you, I have to say, the game before, which I know was extraordinary,
Was
43
unbelievable.
points, it was one of the greatest performances I've ever seen
Yeah.
in
Couldn't
any
miss.
sport. And by the way, it's not just shooting from practically another city. He's 6'2" tall in a game of giants. His ability to maneuver, to pass, his calm in stressful. He's one of the greatest players I've ever seen. He's unbelievable.
If you tested him, Jim, you would find championship DNA. You would find it. But it's true.
I was
Like you
hoping to do that at
look
some
at the
point.
way that he carries himself in every situation. Even last night, he didn't start panicking and started putting up. He was 0 for 9
for 9.
three.
Yeah.
But he is a good three-point shooter, so of course you're going to keep shooting. But even that is like not overly egregious. Whereas it's like, when the Celtics start to unravel, you have a Jason Tatum who in game 1 went 3 for 17, not from 3, just overall. But it's like they keep putting up bad shot after bad shot after bad shot, whereas Steph Curry sort of recognizes, okay, I don't have it today. So if I don't have it, I'm
Give
going
it
to
to
find
somebody
the
else.
open guy, and I'm
Yeah.
going to make the
I
good
agree.
pass, and I'm going to let the people around me lift me up.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Since Marcus Smart does keep putting up these three-point shots and missing, and he's done this in almost every game I've watched.
He's my favorite Celtic, by the way, so be
Well,
careful.
he's a great
I
defender,
love
right? He's a
him.
great defender. I guess, why doesn't the coach say to him, hey, either go for under the basket or just don't do it in the last 3 minutes of the game?
Because sometimes he does nail them, and sometimes he's so like ice in his veins late in the game.
Yeah.
And if you get that Marcus Smart, then maybe we're having a different conversation today. And that's like therein lies the rub, is like these guys just don't seem to understand how to switch gears when something isn't working. Like rather than say, okay, you know what, I clearly don't have my shot today, so let me find somebody. But in Marcus Smart's defense, really nobody had a good shot last night. The bench didn't. I think the bench scored 4 points to, I don't even know how many points. I think it was like 31 or something that the bench of the Warriors did. Your secondary players weren't putting up, weren't making their baskets, and even Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They were good in the third quarter, but they both completely turtled and disappeared in the fourth quarter. And if you're a champion, that's when you have to take over. That's when you have to say, this is my team. This is our game to lose. I'm going to find a way to do it. And they instead just, it's almost like I don't want to say they gave up, but they just fell into terrible habits again.
Okay, I cannot tell a lie before we leave the Celtics discussion. You know when I went to bed? First play, Jason Tatum comes down, throws the ball into the stands. Or maybe it was the second play.
The game? You went to bed in the first quarter?
Not first quarter, first 2 minutes. He's dribbling the ball. He's bringing the ball down up court, or whatever you call it.
Oh, well.
He crosses the half-court line. He passes to somebody on his team to the left, and it ends up flying into the stands. And I figure, this is not our night.
I mean, he has the most, we're not even done with the series yet. You get 2 more games, and he has the most turnovers ever for a single player in NBA Finals history. He's
24
averaging.
also.
He is 24.
We got to be a little kinder to this guy.
I will say this, too. Like, when you go back and look, Larry Bird, although Larry Bird won a title at 24, but he didn't play all that well in his first finals appearance. LeBron didn't win one, I don't think, until 26 or 27. Jordan was 26 or 27. Curry was 26. Kevin Durant was 27. So it does sometimes take some failing to learn how to win, and I think that might have to happen with the Celtics.
Okay, Game 6 is sometime this week.
It's
and
Thursday at 9 p.m. because
Thank you.
9 p.m. starts are so cool.
I'm going to try to make it through half the first quarter. So can you explain to people for who've not been following this story, most people know the PGA is the golf tour, even though it does not include the majors like the U.S. Open at the Country Club this week. Explain.
Well, it does the other majors.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't think the British Open is because that's like the British tour, but the Masters and the PGA Championship.
Okay.
But the U.S. Open is the USGA. It's run by
Okay.
the USGA.
So explain what this new Saudi league is and what the controversy is.
So it's called LIV. It's L-I-V, and we debated for like at least a good 20 minutes yesterday. Is it L-I-V? Is it 54? Is it LIV? What's the name of it?
Oh,
It's
that's a
LIV
good
Golf.
point.
It's LIV Golf. And it is backed by the Saudi Kingdom. And as you may or may not remember, Phil Mickelson was originally just absolutely excoriated for being a part of this because some comments leaked where he basically said, you have to just look the other way at the human rights violations because there's so much money to be made in this league. He ended up
referencing the murder of Khashoggi, by the
Yes.
way. So he wasn't ignorant of what they had done.
Exactly, what they had
Just
done.
the money's so intense, we got to do what we got to do.
And he understands yeah, there's a lot of human rights violation, but oh well, I have money to make because I'm a compulsive gambler, and so I have to reline my pockets somehow. He took a lot of heat for it. He ended up not playing in the Masters. He was invited, however, to the U.S. Open. The USGA has made exceptions, but he has decided to defect, by all intents and purposes, to this LIV Saudi Golf League. And so have some other pretty big names. Bryson DeChambeau, who won a U.S. Open, I think, last year.
Yeah.
Patrick Reed has gone over. Greg Norman is there. But on the flip side, there are some players on the current PGA Tour who are so mad about this league. Rory McIlroy being the most vocal about it, like calling out Greg Norman the other day after he won the RBC Canadian Open. Listen, the whole point of this, Dustin Johnson, another former major champion, also defected to this league. The PGA has suspended 17 players. They are no longer allowed to play on the PGA Tour because they have chosen this other tour over the PGA Tour. And honestly, I think it's the right move. Like, it's one thing if you go play in the
to ban them from
to
the
ban
PGA.
them. Yes,
I
if there's
agree.
one thing if you go and you play in the European League and you want to make a couple, extra buck in some tournaments there, or something like that. But this is, it's just but they are paying guys, some of them upwards of $100 million, like something that you cannot
Whether
make
they
on
win or
whether
lose,
they
just
win
to
or
play.
lose just
But
to play.
but if it turns out first of all, let's hear from the head of the PGA, who's also a fraud. This is the commissioner, Jay Monahan. This is his first interview after he suspended the 17 players because they signed up with the LIV tour. This is his first comment after that.
It's been an unfortunate week that was created by some unfortunate decisions. Those decisions being players choosing to violate our tournament
Actually, I don't even want to hear any
regulations.
more of him because he's getting a lot of credit for being a principled person. If you read his whole statement, he barely mentions as an afterthought the human rights violations of the Saudis. It's because they're undercutting his tour. So we have that. We have, just so people don't think it's only these 17 plus golfers, we have the World Cup going to Qatar, which to say that it is unkind to women and LGBTQ people is an understatement.
And how about the immigrants who they brought in and took their passports,
exactly
the workers
right.
to build all of the stadiums?
So essentially the sports world is, for the most part, doesn't give a damn as long as the cash is
No, I mean, no matter what
there
league,
and up
no matter
front.
what league you look at, I mean, as much as I like the NBA and as much as the NBA is often at the forefront of social justice movements, they are also very tied to China. And if you speak out as
You're
the general manager, I think it was Daryl Morey, the general manager
Houston?
of the Houston
Yeah.
Rockets, speaks out against, or speaks in favor of Hong Kong and Hong Kong's continued independence, he gets shunned by the NBA and he has to issue an apology and he's not allowed to say anything about it. And you have LeBron James, who speaks up about a lot of things, but does not talk about the human rights violations in China
wonder why.
because there are billions, literally billions with a B of dollars. And LeBron just made a short
saw
list of
that.
athletes who are now billionaires, and that's where a lot of that money comes from because the NBA is huge in China.
May I ask you a question, maybe a stupid question, but I don't really understand it. The TV stuff here. we're seeing this Live League or whatever
Yep.
it is, LIV League in Saudi Arabia, right?
No, they're not.
No,
playing
they're not
in
playing in Saudi Arabia. It's just a Saudi Arabian-backed league. So,
So these are
last
playing-
last week they played in. They're playing in Portland this week.
Portland, Oregon, not Maine.
Portland,
Yeah.
Oregon, right? Portland, Oregon this
But
week.
where? How do you watch them? I guess that's my question.
That's a great question, Margaret.
Is it on TV?
Honestly,
I don't know.
if they're on TV. I'm sure it's like a streaming service. That's a great question, Marjorie. I don't have the answer to
Okay,
it.
so
I'm
when
sorry
we tune
that I
in,
don't.
that's okay. So when we tune in on Sunday afternoon, we're still seeing the PGA.
Right, like when you like starting Thursday, NBC. You can see it on NBC 10 here in Boston. We'll carry coverage of the U.S. Open. It's still easier to find.
That's another thing. I'm not a big. Members of my family like golf. I don't
Your
care about golf.
sister is a champion golfer.
She
what do you mean
was. She
members
was when
of
she was
your
younger.
family
Yeah,
like
that's
golf?
right. She's anyway.
Like big time champion.
But what I love is when you tune in, and they're taking their
Oh,
third
that
shot
drives me
from the
nuts.
fourth hole.
Okay.
And looking in the sand trap. Blah, 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 blah. I
Jim,
mean, it's so common.
Why can Rafael Devers hit a home run with
They
people
lose
screaming?
their minds.
I know.
They lose. So I've covered a couple golf events in my time. Obviously, I'm sort of loud and talkative. Check any report cards, talk to anyone who knows me. And sometimes I just forget. So I'll be talking to my photographer, and I've been yelled at multiple times by golfers. And I'm like, oh, God.
By the golfers themselves?
Oh, yes. Yes, and they're usually, no, all due respect, it's usually the end of the day, so it's the worst guys that are left on the course just finishing up their round and probably not going to make the cut. But at least twice I've been told to keep my voice down.
When you don't hear the people, you know what you hear? The birds.
I know.
You do hear the birds.
It is a great, I will say this, how nice is it to put on a nice, sunny, but still kind of cool spring afternoon, you have the Masters on, on Easter Sunday, and you're literally just falling asleep on your couch to the sound of whispering Jim Nance.
And you know what?
And birds and
golf,
Dottie.
Golf is short. These golf courses are short-lived because of climate change. Not only are they going to be underwater, but they can't afford the water to
water
put on
chip,
all these golf courses. So pretty soon they're going to be mulch.
No, but
Try to hit out of
the good
mulch.
news out of California is to keep the golf courses working. They've said that people have to stop drinking water because the golf course. One other story.
It is sports. That's about the route they would go.
We have talked a lot about Jeopardy on this show because arguably it's the greatest concentration of champions this year in the history of the show. A lot of people don't like it. I love it. The Tournament of Champions in November is going to be the best ever. One of the great champions and the biggest woman winner ever is Amy Schneider. Now, she threw out the first pitch the other day at a San Francisco Giants game, Dodgers game. But a lot of people probably didn't even know she did. Is that correct?
That is correct. So Fox, it was I don't know if it was, what I did not understand from the story, it was regional, but I don't know if it was regional nationally or regional regional Fox Sports. You know what? It wouldn't be Fox Sports Bay Area. It had to have been a national broadcast, but only shown regionally because NBC Sports Bay Area actually has the rights to the San Francisco Giants. So it was a national broadcast, but only broadcast in certain parts of the country. And I will say this, and I told this to Jamie, your producer, when he sent this story to me. Usually you don't show a first pitch, even on a national broadcast, like a ceremonial first pitch. They happen every game. They're far ahead of the game. It's not unusual to not throw it, to not show it. What was unusual, and it's also not unusual to show something to promote something else that's going to be on your air. So rather than showing Amy Schneider throwing out the first pitch, she's transgender, by the way, in honor of Pride Month. They instead showed Kurt Busch throwing out the first pitch to push their NASCAR coverage. What I don't know is they did not mention in the broadcast that the first pitch from Kurt Busch was actually 2 days earlier on a Thursday as opposed to Amy Schneider, who threw it out that day on a Saturday. What I don't know is, was it just an honest, innocent oversight, and they were told, hey, we need to push our NASCAR coverage, got to get the ratings up, whatever, it's a big race, show this leading in, he was here, and the announcer just didn't fail to mention or maybe didn't know. I mean, I'm being totally honest here, guys. When the ceremony of first pitch is going on, a lot of broadcasters taking that last pee. They're just going, they're just trying to
but again, as you say, they chose to show somebody else's first pitch.
But they might have shown it because it was tied. But also, sorry, Fox, but you've done this to yourself. There is also the alarm bells that go off and say, was this an edict from higher up that said we are not going to show on Fox, we are not going to show a transgender woman throwing the first pitch in honor of Gay Pride Month.
So let me praise.
So I don't know what it is. There are two
I do.
possibilities.
Let me play some sound from an NBC colleague of yours. a Giants broadcaster and former baseball player, Dwayne Kuiper, is that how you pronounce his name?
Sure.
Calling out Fox for what you just
Yeah, I love
described
this.
rather than showing Jeopardy winner Amy Schneider. Here's what Kuiper has to say.
I want to make a correction from what I watched yesterday, the Fox broadcast. The broadcast implied that Kurt Busch threw out the first pitch yesterday, which was not true of NASCAR fame. Kurt Busch threw out the first pitch on Thursday. It was Amy Schneider from Jeopardy fame who threw out the first pitch on Friday yesterday. So I just wanted to make sure that she got her due.
Good for him, I
Yeah.
should say. Now, here's a quiz for both of you.
What?
Speaking of Amy Schneider throwing out the first pitch of the Giants game for Pride Month, who is throwing out
Tiffany
the first pitch
Faison.
tomorrow at the Globe,
Oh, my
at
God.
the Red Sox?
Is Tiffany Faison?
is
Yeah.
throwing out
Good
the first
for
pitch.
her. Oh,
Yeah, for Pride
how
Night.
nerve-wracking. Has she been practicing furiously?
To the best of my knowledge, she has. I wish I could go, but we're late tomorrow and with work, and I just can't make it.
Well, I
but-
don't think I'm telling tales out of school, but I ate at Sweet Cheeks the other night, which is one of her many
Yeah,
restaurants.
I ate at Orfano on Saturday.
And Orfano, she was nominated as Best Chef Northeast. She didn't win last night at the beer. We wish she had. She deserved it. But in any case, the guy who is the general manager of Orfano's happened to be walking by, and we discussed this. And he
met Cruz.
He pointed to a place behind a bed of restaurants across the
Yeah,
street.
there's a baseball
where
diamond and a
she's
track.
been practicing on the baseball diamond.
Yeah.
So good luck to her tomorrow
She'll do
night.
great.
And she richly deserves
Did you
it.
see her too? She's so famous now. She was hanging out at Game 3,
I
I,
didn't. One
believe,
of our
with Guy
colleagues saw
Fieri. Yeah, she had some baller seats. I was like, thanks for the call.
Well, she just won the tournament.
She did. She won Tournament of Champions. She
front
sure
on
did.
Guy Fieri's
Yeah.
show. Did you watch that thing?
I did. Full disclosure, she told me she won, and so I knew. And
that's
so
in
I would
violation
like
of everything.
I would like fast forward through and only watch her portions. But yes, I did.
Yeah, let me tell you, the things she cooked to win the competition, I never even heard.
That's what's
Of
incredible.
the things that she had to do. By the way, they spin this dial. I forget what it's called.
Oh my God, the
And
Wheel
it
of
says
Death?
The method of,
Right, isn't it the Wheel of
something like
Death?
the method of cooking, the ingredients, whatever. None of which I ever heard of. And she was in the finals, and she won the damn championship.
She's and you know what
Brilliant.
the great thing about that, not that we would need to talk about Tiffany the whole time, but the great thing about this is it's not like the judges know whose food they're tasting. They're
Right.
blind tasting, so
Right,
they're bringing
right, right.
chefs in.
I agree.
So you can't have a personal relationship or show favoritism. It is just on the taste, the quality, and the presentation of the food. So when she wins something like that, that is legit. They're not looking at her and judging. They are judging her off camera, and they don't know who made it until the winner is announced.
That is correct. Trenni Kusnierek, it's good to see you.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. I hope you're
We
wrong
didn't
about
get to
the
talk
Celtics.
about the moose guy.
I know that
Next
time.
week.
Okay.
The moose guy. That was a great
Evergreen
story.
story, guys.
The
Evergreen story.
Shed
Billy
Hunter.
Baker,
We'll explain that
Boston
to you
Globe.
next week.
Okay,
Goodbye.
but we have been speaking with NBC Sports reporter Trenni Kusnierek and anchor Trenni Kusnierek, who predicted a win by the Warriors in 6. We'll see if she's right. We hope she is not. Okay, you are listening to Boston Public Radio. Coming up, we're going to talk with Juliette Kayyem, our national security expert. She's next. She's going to talk about the January 6 hearings, the proposals about tightening a little bit the gun laws in the United States of America, and a few other items. Juliette Kayyem is next. You're listening to 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library.
I'm Frank Oglesby, voice of the T. The doors are opening for Smart Conversation with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Local perspective, local voices. Welcome aboard, Boston's local NPR.
Support for our programs comes from you and South County, Rhode Island, featuring 100 miles of coastline and 20 public beaches. South County visitors can find many ways to enjoy the water in the Ocean State. Learn more at southcountyri.com. Take a drive through LA with musician, singer, songwriter, record producer, and the originator of the California sound. Watch American Masters, Brian Wilson, Long Promised Road, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
Trusted, local news. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Ahead on Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library today, we open hour 2 with national security expert Juliette Kayyem with her analysis of where the January 6th hearings have gone so far and where they are likely. We've also got her take on the tentative Senate gun. Then we'll be joined by Quincey Roberts, Sr. He's the new head of Boston's brand new Office of LGBTQ plus Advancement.
We'll debate the art of eating along with food authority Corby Kummer. He'll also tell us about some of the local chefs and restaurateurs presented with coveted James Beard Awards and about a slew of great eating spots in the Ocean State Little Roadie. Then at CNN's John King, here to bring us up to speed on everything going on in D.C., from the new gun proposals to the January 6th hearings to Supreme Court abortion decisions. All that coming up at Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Tomorrow's public hearing on last year's riot at the U.S. Capitol is postponed. Former Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen, who took over when Bill Barr resigned, reportedly was among the witnesses a House Select Committee was going to present tomorrow during an examination into former President Donald Trump's efforts to coerce state and federal officials to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Here's NPR's Windsor Johnston.
The committee had said the hearing would focus on how Trump pressured the Justice Department to spread false claims of widespread voter fraud. Democratic Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren tells MSNBC that the rescheduling was prompted by technical issues.
It's too much to put it all together, so we're trying to give them a little room to do their technical work is mainly it.
A familiar source said the delay was due to scheduling conflicts and that the panel was rearranging hearing plans. Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen, who took over after William Barr left the Justice Department after the 2020 election, was scheduled to appear at Wednesday's hearing, along with two other former DOJ officials. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
President Biden is playing up job growth as he addresses the country's largest federation of unions, the AFL-CIO.
Since I become president, we've created 8.7 million new jobs in 16 months, an all-time record.
Biden speaking a short time ago in Philadelphia on his commitment to keep growing jobs, while his administration also faces the daunting work of stabilizing prices. Inflation keeps setting new 40-year highs, and fears of a recession are growing, evident in the sharp declines we've been seeing on Wall Street. The Federal Reserve's been trying to pull back spiraling prices with interest rate hikes. The Fed's holding another two-day policy meeting this week. NPR's Scott Horsley says the Fed's moves mean it's costing more money for consumers to borrow money.
Fed policymakers begin a two-day meeting in Washington today with an announcement on interest rates expected tomorrow. While the central bank had telegraphed plans to boost borrowing costs by 0.5 percentage point, a growing chorus of forecasters now think the Fed will go bigger, raising rates by 0.75 point. That would be the largest increase since 1994. Expectations have shifted since Friday's report showing inflation in May was even worse than had been predicted. A report out this morning shows wholesale prices in May were up 10.8% from a year ago. Higher energy prices account for most of the jump between April and May, with a much smaller increase in wholesale food costs. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Elon Musk reportedly is expected to address Twitter employees Thursday for the first time since the Tesla and SpaceX founder offered to acquire the social media company in April. It was unclear why he was holding or the company was meeting with Musk about the meeting. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court is dealing a blow to rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft. The SJC rejected a November ballot question that would have classified their drivers as contractors instead of employees. We have more from GBH Radio's Adam Riley.
In a unanimous ruling, the court says the ballot question improperly combined two distinct issues. First, whether rideshare drivers are contractors or employees, and second, the extent to which rideshare companies should be liable when passengers are injured. The Massachusetts Constitution says ballot questions initiated by citizen petition can only focus on closely related topics. The ruling also says Attorney General Maura Healey was wrong to let the ballot question move forward. Adam Riley, GBH, Boston's local NPR.
Some 264 cities and towns in Massachusetts are about to get 2 million at-home COVID-19 test kits. The kits are being rolled out this week as part of the Commonwealth's latest initiative to reduce the risk of the virus that continues to lurk among us. The number of test kits that each town or city will receive depends on population size, with Boston receiving the lion's share, followed by Springfield and Cambridge. And don't look now, but it was just announced that the southern rock band Lynyrd Skynyrd will play the closing night of the Big E in West Springfield this year. Show is booked for Sunday, October 2nd. Tickets go on sale this Friday. Little known fact about Lynyrd Skynyrd, the band owns a drive-in movie theater that plays a different classic film every night. Yep, Tuesday's Gone with the Wind. 77 degrees, this is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include DuckDuckGo, committed to making privacy online simple. Used by tens of millions, they offer internet privacy with one download. DuckDuckGo, privacy simplified at duckduckgo.com.
It's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, where we broadcast from every Tuesday and every Friday. And I will mention we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. During the January 6th hearings yesterday, Trump's former campaign manager, Bill Stepien, he characterized the factions in Trump's team on election night this way.
There were two groups of we called them kind of my team and Rudy's team. I didn't mind being characterized as being part of Team Normal.
Team Normal. So what does Team Normal really mean? And do they really get to call themselves normal if they didn't speak out publicly until the subpoena came? And by the way, if you're wondering, Giuliani's team is Team Inebriated. Joining us now to discuss is Juliette. No, that's true. I read that somewhere. Is Juliette Kayyem. She's the former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Her new book, which we love, is The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. And before we speak, I have now introduced you. You are going to introduce a guest of yours today.
So I'm thrilled to introduce Captain, right? Zita Marchand. She was my course assistant 2 years ago. She is the, there we go.
Say it again.
I am excited to introduce my former course assistant who now outranks me, Captain Zita Marchand. She is the captain of the New York port and is here for a conference.
Oh my gosh.
First African-American woman to head that and probably one of two most senior minority women in the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard, she told me, has never had a black female admiral, so we may all be looking at her.
Captain, it's a pleasure to have you here. We're really thrilled.
Pressure's on. Don't screw it up.
Don't screw it up. Don't screw it up.
It's great to have you. Yes. Hi, Juliette.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Juliette, what do you think so far? The hearings.
I mean, I think so far so interesting in the sense that I think that they're presenting it in a way that's very manageable for the public. And yes, there's going to be this group of the public that is never going to move. But I think in terms of telling a story, it's very interesting. So the first hearing is January 6th happened. Here's what happened. It is just a day. Now we're taking you back and telling you why that day wasn't spontaneous and why that wasn't just some randomness. And that taking back has been incredible. They did it both at the hearing one and then the second one yesterday. That one, of course, as everyone who listened, focused on the big lie and how Trump had been told by teams, what is it? Team reality? Team normal. Please. These people I don't know how you could enter the Trump White House and think anything is normal, but Team Normal compared to Team Giuliani and all the crazies that were surrounding Trump, Team Normal trying to convince him that there was just no valid argument at this stage that the election had been taken, and them realizing that Trump was not going to accept that fact. And then they either leave, like Barr or the campaign manager, and they all remain silent. So let's just be clear here. Team Normal is also Team Normal quiet.
You know, by the way, if people think I was being unfair, I mean this seriously. You didn't see the hearings yesterday about what my comment about Giuliani a minute ago. Here's Jason Miller yesterday, a former Trump
Miller,
aide.
people.
Speaking, a CNN colleague of yours from time to time. Isn't he on there a lot? Speaking about Giuliani's involvement on election night, here's what he had to say about Mayor Giuliani on election night.
And the mayor was definitely intoxicated, but I do not know his level of intoxication when he spoke with the president, for example. I think effectively Mayor Giuliani was saying, we want it, they're stealing it from us, where'd all the votes come from? We need to go say that we won. And essentially, the anyone who didn't agree with that position was being weak.
And by the way, everybody knows
your
that.
View
Everybody knows
as to what he should or shouldn't say.
My apologies. Everybody knows that Donald Trump adopted that position. Do you have any idea?
Hold on for 1 second, though. I'm just curious because Donald Trump, as you know, doesn't drink.
Yeah.
And part of the reason he doesn't drink is because he had a brother that had terrible alcoholism.
And died from it, yeah.
Yes. So I do think it's odd that, maybe because nobody else would be so vociferous on his side, but the Donald Trump who's sober would be so enamored of Giuliani, who's obviously got a drinking problem.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just because Giuliani is still telling him what he needs to hear. He needs to be able to say, there's a group of people telling me that this is doable. But I've been writing about sort of I think a parallel narrative of what's going on, and I think the reference to the inebriation by Giuliani, the sort of semi-mocking of Ivanka and Jared and their visuals that we saw in the first commission. The ending of the second committee hearing, which was about the fraud and the grift, that they're collecting money for organizations that don't even exist, and they end with that. That parallel theory is that they are also trying to isolate Trump and provide an off-ramp for those who supported him. I mean, in other words, I think what you're seeing, we call it decapitation of the terror leader. That's figurative, not literal. Which is you need to isolate him, mock him, make him look like he's betraying his people, and in some ways side with them. So the Democratic Congresswoman, as she's talking about this, Chris
We have
says,
the sound.
right, they deserve better. So you'll hear this.
Let's hear her. This is Zoe Lofgren, Congresswoman from California, laying out the committee's intention in this hearing, outlining, as Juliette said, Trump's big lie, but also how the Trump team defrauded their own supporters.
Yeah.
Will also show that the Trump campaign used these false claims of election fraud to raise hundreds of millions of dollars from supporters who were told their donations were for the legal fight in the courts. But the Trump campaign didn't use the money for that. The big lie was also a big ripoff.
Isn't that another potential crime?
Yes. So the New York Attorney General, I think this morning, said that she takes the allegation seriously.
I didn't see that.
I know sort of, Twitter sphere and rightfully so, and the left and others, and not even the left, want criminal prosecutions out of this, are looking to the committee to either refer something or some question about whether they're going to do that, refer criminal indictments about what's going on.
To the DOJ.
To the
Department of
DOJ,
Justice,
right?
yeah.
But the other is that is to also think about this as an effort to ensure that Donald Trump is never president again. And I think that's just as important. You all know I have been saying from January that he is the leader of a terror organization. It is hard for us to admit that. I don't call him names. It is just what he has unleashed. We have to figure out a way in which we're not going to make everyone good. We're not going to make everyone kind, but you can certainly ensure that it doesn't get bigger. And I think
How do you ensure that he's not president again as part of this effort? What is
you
it that they do?
You look at the enablers and the elites and where they're starting to head. So here's some of the stuff I'm looking at as a counterterrorism person, right? Wall Street Journal and New York Post both denounced Trump after the first committee hearing. You now have Asa Hutchinson, a very senior governor, Republican, well-respected, saying he's not voting for him. And you have several House representatives doing this. You have the committee focusing on the grift so that those who have given money, they expose in this litany of grift, the most amazing one, that girlfriend, what's her name? The girlfriend of one of the Trump sons.
Guilfoyle.
Guilfoyle.
Kim
got $60,000. So if you're giving,
hold on, just at the 2-minute speech at the ellipse, so people know when she was speaking that
we
day.
screamed $60,000, and all the producers jumped out.
Exactly.
So
we get cab fare,
let
Jim.
me be clear. You don't mean legally barred from becoming president again. You mean politically
people will have moved
untenable
on. People will have moved on. And your scenes, I know he's in all of our brains still, but he can't fill a room anymore when he has these big conferences. These big rallies. He's still off Twitter. He's clearly grifting all the time because he needs the money. So like this Saudi thing that you guys were talking about in the last segment. But this is. These are the pieces that we look at. I wrote that if democracies don't die in a single blow, but neither do violent movements. And so all of these different pieces are, I have to say, I'm feeling good. I think it's looking good.
What about the Merrick Garland angle?
Yeah.
Charges from the Department of Justice. Isn't that dispiriting if he doesn't at least file some charges?
Well, dispiriting for what purpose?
Dispiriting because the sense is you get a parking ticket, you got to pay it. This guy does all this stuff, he gets away with it.
So, and I think if they think that they can bring the case and that they won't get overruled by the Supreme Court for bringing that case,
let him get overruled.
I get
by
it.
The
so I
Supreme Court.
get the desire for that. I totally do. I am just saying that him dying alone in Palm Beach with nothing but his crazies, right? Team crazy or team whatever, loony or team inebriated, is a second best narrative, and we should not think it's a bad narrative. I mean, this is his isolation, as I've been saying since January 6th, 2020, has got to be the number one goal. Is his isolation. And therefore making sure that he doesn't become president.
One last thing
again,
on this, Felice,
which would
from me.
be
Explain for a second why, according to a story I saw on your network this morning, CNN.com, the chair of the committee has already said, Benny Thompson, that we will not be doing a referral. And he seemed to be saying to the Department of Justice, criminal referral, he seemed to be saying, regardless of where the evidence takes us, that's up to the Department of Justice, when in fact, a congressional committee, as they have done on contempt of Congress charges, can make a referral. What is that about?
I don't know. And I think Cheney tried to correct him last night.
Did.
Yeah, she
Other
said,
members
she
did
said that
too.
So I don't know what he's saying. And, and some of this is, they've been so disciplined, to date. It was sort of shocking. I should probably admit, as I've admitted in writing, I was interviewed by the staff twice. And I found the staff who you're starting to see in these. They're really interesting people that are all young and a pretty diverse group. And I was really impressed with them putting January 6th in both historical context, like sort of how we got to that moment, but also that it's ongoing, and that the part of their job is to undermine that ongoing part. It is.
You painted a far more positive picture
I know.
of the here. No, but we want to hear it because we started the show by saying we got a lot of criticism from listeners yesterday about us being so negative. Let's move to another topic where I have to say I'm on the fence, and hopefully you can push me onto the positive side. There is a tentative gun deal, I assume people know, in the United States Senate with at least tentatively 10 Republicans signed on. The reason that matters is you need 60 votes to break a filibuster. It does something on mental health. It provides resources for these red flag laws for states that don't have them. We already do have one. It ensures, maybe the most important provision, that if you're 18 to 21 and want to buy a weapon, your juvenile criminal record, if there is one, your mental health record is available. It wouldn't have mattered in Uvalde. It would have mattered potentially in Buffalo. And it closes the so-called boyfriend loophole, where in a domestic violence situation, apparently the law up until this moment is you have to be married to the person against whom you committed domestic violence. This would extend it to somebody you're living with, having a serious relationship with, etc. Everybody knows this falls miles short of what Democrats and sane Americans, the vast majority, want. But the arguments of people like Chris Murphy from Connecticut, who's the chief negotiator for the Democrats, and I have huge respect for him, is it cracks the door open. We finally have gotten something, and it will provide the opening to get more done line. Where do you fall in this?
I'm in that one. I'm in that camp, which is, okay, here's what everyone wants, and here's what we can get right now. But I don't think we should underestimate either the substantive benefits of these provisions and of getting us safer. We don't get to safe in this country, especially with our gun culture, and the significant narrative that that the NRA is no longer untouchable.
That's
so the NRA has, for 30 years, so it's not 20 years, it's 30 years. The assault weapon ban expired 20 years ago, but it was passed 10 years before that. There's not been a single piece of federal legislation related to guns, gun ownership, gun management, or anything. So, and that is because of the NRA. The NRA is, as we know, an immoral but also a bankrupt, organization that's losing membership. Has
Literally bankrupt. You don't mean that rhetorically.
No, literally bankrupt. And also there's investigations about its ties to Russia. It is an organization that is captured by like a loony board, and so its membership is going away. There is room for a responsible gun ownership organization. The NRA decided long ago it was not going to get into responsible ownership and just deny everything. So there's a significance to having legislation to simply say the NRA is, we're starting to see some loosening of its stronghold. The substantive provisions, and I'm going to cough right now. Give me a second.
It's okay, you're entitled. We're talking to Juliette Kayyem, yes.
Sorry about that. The substantive provisions are significant. They aren't getting us to where the three of us and 90% of Americans are, which is to get some of these weapons off the street. But the 18 to 21-year-old provision is really key. If you just look at these numbers, and I know it doesn't relate to handguns. I know it doesn't relate to suicide. I get it. But if you just look at the mass shootings with these kinds of weapons, you really have an 18 to 21-year-old problem. I've looked at the literature. This is going to be significant because what you want to do is just establish a barrier to them.
Why do you say it doesn't relate to suicides? It does if you're an 18 to 21-year-old.
Right, that's right.
Oh, you mean beyond that?
Beyond
okay,
that,
okay.
right.
So why don't you give your rejoinder that you gave
here's
to me?
my concern. And by the way, I want to be convinced, and I'm open.
And we're assuming it passes, right? Yes.
Right. I mean, that's a whole issue too. But assuming it does pass, my concern is, and I've actually said this to you for years on the radio. I said my great concern through the years was the NRA is eventually going to wise up, agree to a infinitesimally small reform of gun laws so they can say, don't tell us we don't compromise on these issues. My fear is this gives cover to the Republican Party to never do anything again rather than cracking the door open by saying in 2022, after these two horrible outcomes in Uvalde and in Texas and New York, we did something. Tell me that's wrong.
No, I will say it's descriptively accurate, but I think that it's giving. I don't think it's giving political. I don't think it's giving any political counter for the Democrats about why it would be politically beneficial for them to do this. So part of it is you're going to have all House Republicans voting against this. So that's so here's your narrative.
A good point,
all
actually.
we wanted was these little things, and we can't even get these yahoos to vote for that. The other challenge where I think the Democrats then now can begin to focus on sort of, how do you create more momentum is, and this has always been true in terms of gun and gun legislation, is gun owners who prioritize the Second Amendment vote on this issue only. They could care less about anything else. People who are into responsible gun ownership are also into housing and poverty and schools and COVID and you name reproductive rights. So we don't vote singularly as gun restriction voters. And so that's why it's always been hard to get a lot of momentum for this because people are off doing all of their other things. So I think this is showing that you can actually get people to focus on this. we move forward, and then you try again.
Well, as many people have pointed out, Scott in Florida made some changes in the gun laws in Florida.
And that was the
after
18 to
Parkland,
21.
And he moved from being the governor to the senator. So
Yeah.
By the way, 18 to 21 about purchase, which is the big thing, not just checking
and
background
18, and I mean, there's so many things that one would want in this, but I was really hoping they could get that 18 to 21 purchase because, the just the literature I read, this is not my specialty, but just the emotional maturity of the teenage boy, so to speak. If you just put 1, 2, 3 barriers between them and killing 19 kids. And the cognitive,
when you look at these crime stats, you see that the vast majority of crimes overall are committed between boys. I know the high end is 24. I'm not sure if the other one is 16 or 18, but it's in that cohort right there that the vast majority of crimes in general. And we can all think back to our non-criminal activities of boys we may know about speeding and crashing cars and drinking and everything else they did that was.
While you're looking at me again?
Not that any of us ever did those
Okay.
things.
But you know what I realized? I tried asking you a couple times. I'm sorry to go back, but just for a second, I don't think I ever got this out. And if I did, don't humiliate me by saying I already answered that question. Do you have any insight or speculation as to why tomorrow's hearing was postponed? This is, again, for those who aren't clear, there was supposed to be a third hearing tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. It's been postponed. The hearing that's to begin Thursday at 1 is still on the schedule as far as I know. You don't know what the deal is?
Don't know. I mean, I know the speculation is rampant, and so, is it that they're expecting other news from the Supreme Court? Is it that there's going to be surprise witnesses who we don't know who they are? Because they're using the witnesses really interestingly. They're sort of on for 2 minutes, right? And so, but it's very, very interesting.
She's saying, for the record, if it matters, Lofgren is saying it's to get their act together because they need more time to get their act together. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
I mean, these are big deal. I mean, these are big productions. I mean, I don't know about you, but I sort of watched Mesmerized for 2 hours, and then all of a sudden I look up, it's 12 o'clock. I was like, I didn't blink once.
You know what's amazing? Apparently, I mean, if it is to be believed, and I assume it is, that they didn't know till early morning yesterday that the former campaign manager, Stepien, was not coming because his wife was in labor. The fact that they transitioned the hearing by 10:45 to include all of this video testimony from Stepien, which I'm assuming they weren't going to play had he been an actual witness there, was pretty, was pretty
well,
amazing.
I'd say Cheney's been the star so far, and Lofgren is coming second.
I think that's
you know
right.
what's incredible about this country? I know this is a mindless point to make at this stage of our history.
We like those.
This woman, Cheney, votes with Donald Trump 93% of the time. The notion that she is what he loves to call people, a rhino, a Republican in name only, she's one of the most conservative, Trump-supporting members of the House of Representatives. She just happens to believe in the Constitution and democracy, and she's being trashed by his supporters. Hysterical, that's what he called her.
I mean, she's like unmoved as you can be. Talk about ice in your veins.
I know.
They can use her on the Celtics tonight.
I know, and she gets that from her dad. I mean, you never saw
one
him
of our
waver.
favorites too. By the way,
I know. She voted with the Republicans against the gun legislation.
Imagine.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
so
right.
that's who she,
that's exactly
who she is.
right.
But I said this to Jim. Imagine if she was your mother in the teen years. Can you imagine? I mean, she wouldn't put up with anything. Let me tell you that. She would find the drink and drugs and sex and whatever else you were doing.
I'm so curious, like your teenage years, because it just sounds so much more fun than mine. I mean, when you reminisce going back, I'm like,
Can I tell you something?
I had a bad boyfriend.
Don't get nervous. For whatever it's worth, I know everything about Marjorie's teenage years.
Yeah.
I do. Look at her face, by the way.
Oh, my God.
And trust me, I'm holding it over her head. That's number one. Number two, the only time I've ever seen you blush, which you're about to again.
Stop it.
Oh, here we go.
Stop it.
Wait, you
stop
brought it up.
Zappa.
I know. Okay.
Why do you get so anxious when we mention this?
I grew up in LA, so I dated a Zappa.
Dweezil.
I mean, please.
Dweezil Zappa was on our show.
A Zappa, and I should say, just to my credit, I used to have it. You're not going to remember who it is, but I mean, you don't know who it is, but it's a guy named Donal Logue, who's an actor.
Oh,
and he was on, So I have two, but like, you know.
Okay,
wait a minute.
I
know.
Wait a second.
What do you
stop
call
with the dated?
Dweezil
It's like that dated.
For short, do you call him Dweez?
No, just stop. It was like,
No, but wait,
I
no,
opened
can
my
I get a
heart to
question
you
here?
people once because I was trying to say,
Open
well,
my heart. Excuse me, Dweezil Zappa's on the show. She texts me while the show is on saying I went to the prom with him.
Or
and then when I mentioned it on
He's
the
like,
air.
he doesn't remember.
By the way, was
so
that the
sad.
most humiliating moment of your
What?
life?
When he
so I
didn't
said
remember?
to Dweezil, by the
He
way,
thinks it's his
on my
brother.
phone I
I
have the
know,
woman you
I
took to the
know.
prom.
But I
oh,
have to
who?
tell you, I know he doesn't.
Juliette Kayyem.
He was doing a
huh?
lot of
I
drugs
know.
maybe himself.
He
There you
was,
go.
but it
Does
wasn't
things to
really
your
the
memory.
prom. But I just have to say, I
Whatever.
had no fun in high school, and like he called me
doubt
back,
that
and so now,
sincerely.
like, yeah, no, trust me,
Really? You? I don't think
yeah,
so.
trust me.
You were studying?
Well, can I
Trust
tell
me.
you?
Yeah, yeah, basically.
Let me tell you one thing. The fun you didn't have, Marjorie made up for. I am telling you, someday,
Yeah.
I will
Someday.
share
It was
what
not.
I
It
know.
was not really a big deal.
We'll
In
have
any
a
case,
we'll have a
That's
January
okay.
6th
Juliette,
committee
it's great
hearing
to
about
see
that.
you.
Okay, see you later.
And Captain, it
Bye.
was great to meet you, Captain, and
Captain!
congratulations.
Yay.
And we wish you a lot of luck in the future. Thanks for joining us
Dweezil
today.
Zappa. I think you should
I
get
know.
the scoop.
Stop it,
while we're
you
off the
guys.
air. Get the scoop.
See you,
Okay,
Juliette.
we've been speaking with Dweezil Zappa's date,
At the
Juliette
prom.
Kayyem, who was a former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security under Barack Obama, and the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy
Look at the
School
picture of
Government.
Donnell Logue. It's on our computer.
Oh.
Check him out.
Oh my God!
Oh, my
Good
God.
for you, Juliette. Hubba, hubba, hubba. Anyway,
Hubba, hubba. Who talks like that?
her book is I Do. The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. Coming up, Boston has a new office of LGBTQ advancement. We're going to speak to the person in charge with heading it up, Quincey Roberts Sr. He is next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
From the GBH Newsroom,
I'm Ken Cooper, Senior Editor at GBH News. All politics is local. Everything gets built upon that, from the local to the county, to the state, to the country. So it's important to build community and different perspectives on a common body of knowledge for local people to be able to make decisions and hold their governments accountable. That's why local news is really important.
part of your community. GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Sengenics, a precision medicine company working to improve patient outcomes through the discovery of autoantibody biomarkers. Sengenics.com. That's SENGENICS.com. And Legal Seafoods, now hiring at locations across New England, including servers, hosts, cooks, and dishwashers. A variety of schedule options are available. You can apply at legalseafoods.com/careers.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. We just got a text from somebody who said, who is Dweezil Zappa? He is the son, my God, he is the son of the legendary Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
Get with the damn program. In any case, that's the deal. Joining us now is the new head of the city's newly created Office of LGBTQ plus Advancement. That would be Quincey Roberts Sr. Congratulations, Quincey. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Jim and Marjorie.
Thank you very much for coming in, Quincey. So tell us, what is the Office of LGBTQ Advancement, and why do we need it here in Boston?
All right. So, believe it or not, the great city of Boston does not have a place for LGBTQ folks to go. That's a government agency. So this is the first department of its kind that has resources and a safe haven for all queer folks to come to in the city of Boston. We have safe spaces. We have places like Bagley. We have places like Boston Glass, Fenway Health, but there's no place where policy is set.
But am I not right? And I think you had something to do with this. Wasn't there a division of the Office of Neighborhood Services or something that dealt with LGBTQ plus issues before? Am I right about that?
You are partially right about that. So historically,
Partially for me is good, by the way, Quincy. I'll take that. Go ahead.
We'll take it. So historically, it's been a LGBTQ plus liaison, one person, but that role was split in two. So when I had it, I was split between LGBTQ services, and then I was also doing human rights work and education and outreach. So Mayor Wu has turned this into a department. So we're really excited about that.
So tell me how this works. I mean, I'm thinking, for example, if you had some housing issue, so then you would have some place in the city to go with that specifically that could deal with housing and LGBTQ stuff. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
It's kind of what we're talking about, and we want to be more of a bridge because, yes, housing is actually the #1 issue that I've received from my survey. I have a Beyond Pride survey that I've been shopping around for the last 4 months. So, for example, if someone has struggles with housing, homelessness, what we want to do is be able to connect them to the services. Because what I said yesterday on a show, I love the city of Boston. We have so many different resources, but we do a bad job of communicating those resources. So my job is to make sure that the queer community knows that the resources are available for them and how to navigate city departments to receive those resources.
So you're the entry, to be clear, you're the entry point.
I'm the entry point.
And then you direct people as a navigator, use the word, for lack of a better expression, to whatever the appropriate department or agency is that can help them with the issue they're confronting.
Absolutely, and that is one part of my job, but I have 2 other pillars.
What are they?
Policy, because nothing happens without policy change. We can have all the prides, the celebrations, the events, but without policy change, nothing really changes. So I will be advising the mayor along with my wonderful staff of policy changes. For example, we're working on the LGBTQ ordinance where we want to change the forms in the city of Boston to include gender nonconforming, because right now it's just male and female. So we do know we have a large population of individuals that are gender nonconforming or gender neutral. So
what's the third issue? You said there's a third.
Third is programming, because we want to go back to the element of pride and how pride started, and it started from community. A lot of people are talking about the lack of the pride parade, but I want to focus more on funneling resources into community-driven events.
We're speaking to Quincey Roberts, Sr. He is the new head of the newly created Boston Office of LGBTQ plus Advancement.
You know, you mentioned, Quincy, that this is the first time this designation really has happened in Boston. I'm wondering, since we're hearing a lot of very bad news on the LGBTQ front from places like Florida and from some of these other states that are really going backwards, is Boston behind the other big kind of Democratic cities like New York, Philadelphia, D.C., or are we? Is what we're doing in Boston unusual, or are they already doing this kind of thing in those places?
So the thing with Boston, we do a great job when it comes to policy. This is Massachusetts is where gay marriage was founded and started. So we do a good job on that front, and we could always do a little bit better. But when we go to other cities, and that's something me and my husband did all year, is travel around different major cities like Atlanta. We have New York, we have Philly, even Charlotte, North Carolina has some type of government agency where people can come to. And that's actually pretty much what I told Mayor Janey when she was in office. Like, we have Atlanta, we have North Carolina that have all these government resources for queer folks, but we're the Mecca. We are the first, so we didn't have it. So that's where we're kind of behind a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, Quincy, speaking of same-sex marriage, the right to it being created when Margaret Marshall, who was with us a few weeks ago, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court, wrote and rendered the decision 20-plus years ago. When Justice Marshall was with us 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ago, she said that she feared that if the leaked Alito decision in the Roe v. Wade potential overrule case was to become the ultimate decision, that so many other things were potentially at risk, among them same-sex marriage, the Obergefell case, obviously before the Supreme Court. When a constituent says to you, I'm worried about my existing marriage, I'm worried about the marriage I hope to or plan to have in a state that is much more friendly to all kinds of people, maybe not quite friendly enough yet. What do you say to them?
So I've actually had that question for myself, and I've been asked that over the weekend with a lot of different Pride events. So what I say to them is rely on our legislators, our great legislators, our city councils, our wonderful mayor, because they have our back. And we won't allow that here in Boston. I can't speak for the federal government, but I can only speak here for Massachusetts and the city of Boston. We have great allies. We also have great elected officials that are, some of them that are queer. So I think we're in good shape as being the leaders for the country when it comes to just making sure that we have all queer folks, and especially young folks, and have their back.
We're talking with Quincey Roberts, Sr. He's heading up the city's new Office of LGBTQ Advancement. You know, this, I guess for at least a couple of years now, we've been talking every Pride weekend about the Pride Parade.
Yeah.
And there isn't going to be a big Pride Parade anymore. I think, didn't it start here, like when Copley Place went down to City Hall?
Right behind us.
Okay, that's done. But there's a lot of other stuff that's happening. So tell us.
So yeah, and I just want everyone that's listening, we want the parade back. Everybody enjoys the parade. Myself, I enjoyed the parade, but we know the issues that came up in the past. So for this year, we don't have a parade. That's fine, but we have over 60 events that's happening in the community, for the community, put on by the community. A lot of people think that the city of Boston is taking over Pride. I'm here to say on the record that that's not happening. We just don't have the capacity, and it's a conflict of interest as well. And we want the community to lead us, tell us what's going on. So I've been on the job for 2 weeks now, and I've been to 16 events.
Oh, wow.
16 events, and then we have probably about 24 left. And if anybody wants to know some of those events that I'm talking about, you can feel free to go to boston.gov/LGBTQ, and you'll see a list of events. They're not all in the city, but if you are listening and you have an event that you want me and my staff to promote, go to that website. You can always send me an email, and we'll make sure it gets up on the city website.
Boston.gov/LGBTQ.
Yes.
So there's a school of thought, and I sort of feel that you may subscribe to this as well. I think most people didn't want to see the Pride Parade disappear. They may have wanted to see it transformed to maybe a little less corporate, a lot more diverse. There's a point of view that says there's some potential short-term benefit, and maybe you were touching upon it a minute ago. It requires greater inclusion and creativity rather than just relying on the parade.
Absolutely.
And you're smiling, so you agree with that?
I wholeheartedly agree
Why?
with that, because I'm a grassroots organizer, and everyone who knows me knows I like to roll up my sleeve and get it done. We do a bad job of relying on others to bring us joy. So what I've seen over the last 2 weeks is the community bringing itself joy. So yeah, we don't have the parade, but we do have a lot of community events.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you arrive in this position? What were you doing before this, when you were aspiring Quincey?
So I'm a little emotional because I just left Faneuil Hall. I received an award this morning from the Massachusetts LGBT Youth Commission for my advocacy in the past, my husband and I. So
congratulations.
Thank you. I came to Boston 16 years ago from Henderson, North Carolina. So to sit here, to be in Faneuil Hall this morning, to be recognized for my work is heaven sent, because a gay black man from Henderson, North Carolina, to be in Faneuil Hall and to be recognized and to be celebrated is just heaven sent. And I hope my mom's smiling down on me. So this is it means a lot. So again, I've been here for 16 years, and I started off in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So it was great to see Juliette, a good friend of mine. So yeah, we go way back.
Did you know Dweezil Zappa and her when they were dating at the prom?
I did not know that. But I started off in Cambridge, and I started off as a political finance fundraiser. We were doing telemarketing and stuff like that. And for me, I wanted more because Massachusetts, specifically Boston, was so just amazing to me. I was watching it on CNN, and I was like, hey, I would love to live in Boston. I love Larry Bird. I'm a big Celtics fan. A lot of people say, in Henderson, North Carolina, you watch Larry Bird? Absolutely.
There was a pretty good basketball player that went to North Carolina. Do you happen to know who that would be?
North Carolina.
I
UNC?
believe that'll be Michael Jordan.
Oh, yeah, Michael Jordan, absolutely. I thought you were talking about a Celtics.
No.
I thought you were talking about a Celtics. I'm like,
Yeah.
but no, came here, did the work, got interested in politics, looked over the river from Cambridge and said, I really want to get involved in politics. So I just hit the ground running, just started making phone calls, volunteering for different things. And then in the process, me and my husband, struggling with our sexuality, being two black men from the South, we didn't see ourselves in a lot of these organizations.
Yeah.
We love the organizations that we work with, the Fenways of the world, the Bagleys of the world. They are great for most people, but I didn't see myself at that age. I was aging out of those youth services, so I didn't see anything for young adults. So me and my husband in 2009, we started the Hispanic Black Gay Coalition just to answer those questions and serve those individuals that looked like me. We got office space in Union United Methodist, which I am a proud member of Union United Methodist. I'm actually the first openly gay trustee of Union United Methodist.
Wow.
And I'm also we are the first openly gay couple to get married in Union United Methodist right here on Columbus. So I'm really, really proud of that. And just doing all that work got me the attention of Mayor Walsh. Called me up one day and said, hey, I love the work you're doing. I heard that you are a veteran. I am not a veteran. My parents are veterans. So I am an Army brat, a proud Army brat. So that we made that connection. He said, hey, I need someone that's diverse to work in veteran services. I did that about 9 years ago. Started, loved the job, just took on a life of its own. After veteran services, I did fair housing and equity because I wanted to get involved in home ownership. I didn't own a home at the time, but I was interested. So my mother always taught me, if you want to know something and you don't have the degrees, volunteer and get to know the people that are around you. So I did that, worked my way on up to Human Rights Commission. And then when Mayor Janey got appointed, she tapped me to be the last LGBTQ plus liaison. So in the past 15, 16 years, I've been an angelic troublemaker. Like my
good trouble.
Good trouble. Like one of my mentors from afar, Bayard Rustin, who was MLK's right-hand man and the drum major of the March on Washington. So I believe I am an angelic troublemaker because I'm very creative and I like to push the envelope. So,
can I tell you something?
Yes, sir.
We've been accused for 2 days of being negative. This was the most positive 15 minutes.
Yeah,
you are
exactly.
really.
Thank
we
you.
hope you will stay in touch with us as you expand
We need some of the
your work.
positivity to rub off on us, Jim.
Really, and let us know what you're doing. Again, if people want to learn about what's going on or want to add things to what's going on, boston.gov/LGBTQ. Quincy, we wish you a lot of luck, and it's really great to have you here. Thank you so much
and
for
congratulations on being a fan.
Happy belated birthday
Thank
to
you very much.
Yeah.
Thank
Birthdays
you very
are
much.
important.
They are important.
Thank you
That
so
is
much.
right.
Great to see you, Quincy.
We were speaking with Quincey Roberts Sr., who is heading up the city's new Office of LGBTQ Advancements. And thank you again very much, Quincy, for being
Be
here.
well, Quincy. Great to see
Coming
you.
up, we're going to open the lines and start a conversation about something that I'm not wild about, but Jim is kind of
yes,
into
I am.
it, not surprisingly. That would be eating alone. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. And we are also live streaming on YouTube. What is it, Jim?
YouTube.com/GBH.
Thank you.
Few people know the toll of gun violence better than Gabby Giffords, who was nearly killed in 2011.
I chose to make a new start, to move ahead, to not look back. And I'm fighting to make the country safer.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. We asked Giffords about the current fight for gun control this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Rockport Music, presenting the Rockport Chamber Music Festival at its seaside Chilinlu Performance Center, with violinist Ray Chen and double bassist Xavier Foley on works by Bach, Vivaldi, and Foley. rockportmusic.org. And Boston Children's Hospital, ranked the nation's #1 children's hospital by U.S. News and World Report, where families from Massachusetts and the world come for answers. bostonchildrens.org/answers.
Trusted. Local. News. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library and streaming, as Marjorie said, on youtube.com/GBH News. We're about to begin a bifurcated discussion. What I mean by that is we're going to start it briefly now. Then we're going to talk to Corby and John King, and then we will continue that discussion, so you'll have an opportunity to think about it. Here's the topic: eating alone. How do you feel about eating alone? This is inspired by a piece in The Atlantic, which we're going to discuss with Corby, which is really not about the concept of people deciding to go out and eat alone in a restaurant, in a park, or wherever it is. It's about some other, I think, more serious issues about eating alone. But we want to talk about it as a behavior that some people find to be of great joy, like me, and some people are mortally turned off by, and that would be Marjorie Egan. Our number is 877-301-8970. You can text us, you can call us, you can do whatever you want. And again, we'll continue this at roughly 1:35 or something this afternoon. We've discussed this 3 or 4 times through the years. I find it to be an unmitigated joy. You hate it. Why?
Let's differentiate. Are you talking about eating alone in your house?
No, that's what this story in The Atlantic is about.
Eating alone in
a restaurant. Go to a park and you get a dinner, you take it out, and why is that?
I don't like it. Because, eating in a park is one thing. Eating in a restaurant by myself.
Why?
Because I feel like, something, I feel kind of pathetic. I couldn't find anybody to eat dinner with me, so here I am, eating dinner all alone.
Maybe you like solitude.
Maybe I like solitude. I'm too self-conscious. Jim, I don't have your confidence to boldly there eat alone. I think it's also because I'm female and not male.
Well, don't you think that's changed a little bit? I would argue that was a lot more
Last
problematic.
time we had this discussion, I was chastised by callers who said that, wake up, Marjorie, women in business are out all the time traveling and they're eating alone on a regular basis.
Unless they're traveling with Mike Pence, obviously. As we know, when Mike Pence was vice president, am I not right about this? I have to recall that he would never
eat alone
or
with
another woman.
With another woman without his wife being with a mom.
Yeah. Mom, he calls her.
Doesn't call her mother, I think, actually. It's mother.
I think he's confused about that, the mom thing, or no?
Well, Mike Pence may have a point, Jim. I think lots of people are going out to dinner with a colleague, had a couple of drinks, and things did not always end well. You know what I mean?
Okay, so essentially, Marjorie talked about why she's uncomfortable, but I find it to be one of the great moments of solitude and joy. By the way, you can sit there just looking at other people watching.
Right.
If you feel self-conscious, what you can do? You can bring a book.
Bring a book.
You can read something on your phone.
I'm worried about what people are talking about.
That is what it's about. You're worried about what people will think of you.
Exactly. I wish I weren't like that way, Jim, but I'll work on it in therapy. But I was also going to point out that one of these things, and you talk about the more serious stuff, you're talking about people with eating problems.
Well, that's part of what this story in the Atlantic is about.
But there's also a thing about eating alone in your own home. Either your kids are grown, or your significant other isn't there, or you're in your house, and people that actually will make a whole dinner, and they'll sit down and they'll eat their dinner.
You don't have a problem with that, do you? No one even knows you're doing it. So what's the problem with that?
Well, I just would never do it. I mean, if I were by myself eating, I just shoved the food in my mouth while I was standing up and emptying the dishwasher.
What do you have, like a peanut butter and butter sandwich or
I do.
something on white bread?
Sometimes I worry about eating too fast, and then I will die in my kitchen because I'm eating a peanut butter sandwich. And you know what the highlight maneuver doesn't work on?
What is?
Peanut butter.
Is that really true?
That's true, Jim.
Is that why dogs stick their tongue out like 400 times?
I don't know. But some people do that.
Do what?
They will have a whole a ritual
I
where they will
understand that.
make their dinner by themselves, eat right there. They might even light a candle at the table, have a flower on the table, and do a whole thing where other of us just stand there, don't even sit
You know
down.
what those people are
and shove
called, by the
food
way?
in.
Do you know the adjective for that?
What?
Delusional. Let's go to John. We're only going to take a few calls now, and again, we'll restart this in the end of the 1 o'clock hour. John in Providence, you're first. Are you for or against the eating alone experience?
I'm definitely for eating alone.
Why is that?
No question about it. I don't know. There have been times where I've been eating dinner, let's say, with somebody, and their eating habits are disgusting.
That's a good one.
That's one reason.
You know, I had a friend whose jaw always clicked when he chewed.
Yeah, can't tolerate that.
Yeah. Or people that talk with their mouth full, or people that eat too close to the
wait
plate.
a second. But wait a second.
Or people that scrape their teeth across the fork.
Okay, fine. So, John, the reason you like eating by
I'm with you,
yourself
John.
is not because you like eating by yourself, but because you don't like eating with other people. Is that where you're going?
I think so. You know, I think that's probably dialed it down pretty well.
Okay, you're an honest man. John, thank you very much for the
Yeah,
call.
we could do a whole separate segment on bad eating habits.
Well, you know who, by the way, who you cannot eat next to if you're in a theater? Who would that be? You may know this person.
Jared Bowen?
Jared Bowen.
Because he's opening candy?
No, he does not like. If
Oh.
you go to a play or an event with him, which
Yeah.
I occasionally
Well,
do,
he's right
and you
about
have
that.
as well, he does not like
Wrappers.
Well, if you're having a tuna fish sandwich, that's a problem.
Yeah.
If you're eating popcorn in a
I
movie,
know,
that's a problem.
but people make a lot of noise with the wrappers. I think that's very upsetting because the wrappers make a lot of noise when you open the candy. 877-301-8897 is the number.
Yeah.
Well, I want to give it because we're going to be talking about this a little bit later.
Can I read a couple of texts before we go to Corby, though?
Yep.
I used to hate eating alone. Now I have 3 small children. I would really enjoy eating alone and actually getting to slow down and enjoy it without anticipating spills and convincing the littles. How
That's
much
right.
do you love that expression?
The littles to eat
the
their
littles
food.
eat their
That's
food.
a good one. Then you have to eat the leftovers of the littles afterwards. You know what I mean? Especially if it's grilled
Here's
cheese.
another great one. Peter from Wellesley. Best place to eat alone without feeling awkward is a sushi bar, which you, of course,
Why
would not go to.
is that?
I don't know why I agree with them, but I totally agree with them. But you won't do that because you don't do raw fish.
I don't like
so it's-
sushi.
In any case, we'll continue this discussion in the 1 o'clock hour. John, we agreed to take a break, correct? We're
No,
going to go.
no,
I
no,
take
right
that
to
back.
Corby.
We're going right to Corby Kummer, speaking of food. We are joined now by, yes, we are. We are joined now by the food policy writer, Corby Kummer. Corby is the executive director of the Food and Society Policy Program in the Aspen Institute, senior at the Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. He joins us on Zoom, I think. We'll find out in a second. Corby, it's nice to see you.
It's nice to be here, and I am joining you by Zoom if it works.
Yes, you are.
Oh, I see you. Hello, Corby.
Hi, Corby. There he is.
Nice to see you.
So, Corby Kummer, before we get to your take on eating alone, James Beard Award winners. We have some local entries, and who won? Why is this a big deal? Tell us about New England too.
Well, first of all, what's always a big deal with James Beard is you want the people you support locally to win. And they took a 2-year pause, the Beard Awards, to include diversity top to bottom and try to remove a lot of favoritism and perceived problems with the previous voting process, most of it diversity. And they had a really interesting list of semifinalists and finalists, 20 semifinalists, 5 finalists. For New England, and Tiffany Faison was on it for a couple of things. Boston wasn't as well represented. There was Somerville's Rebel nominated an outstanding wine program. Tiffany Faison, Best Chef Northeast. The Best Chef Northeast instead went to a Thai restaurant in Randolph, Vermont.
Yeah.
Less than 3 hours, a great place in Vermont. And it's a chef named Nisashan Morgan, and the restaurant is called SAP, S-A-A-P. And it's sort of classic Thai food, great Vermont beers. And I think that expanding regionally and including diversity and, every kind of category is really great. So I'm really happy about that. And then our own Irene Lee from May, the fabulous food truck and dumplings, is now mostly a dumpling business, less of it serving people, had been announced in March as getting a leadership award as a visionary for her work in creating a better food world. And Irene Lee has helped local business owners understand how to get licenses access to capital, all the things that food entrepreneurs most need to know. She's a national leader. So that was a great award they gave.
Irene Lee was with us after she won that. She was the youngest winner ever. The award has gone to people like Michelle Obama before her. And by the way, she did a lot of that great work with a person who should win a leadership award before too long either, Tracy Chang from Pagu, who's done a lot of the same sorts of things. By the way, I would have picked Tiffany, one of the great restaurateurs and chefs ever. She did lose that person in Vermont. Rebel in Somerville is terrific. And shouldn't you disclose, or you're too humble? You know somebody quite well who won a James Beard Award not too many years ago. Do you not?
I know many people have won James
That
Beard
would be
Awards.
you. That would be you, Corby. Corby, you won a damn James Beard Award. Am I not
No,
right?
I won 6, but who's
excuse, you won six James Beard Awards?
Wow.
Yeah.
What? Only the
Well,
heavy hitters on
keep
our show,
talking.
Jim.
So
Yeah, I used to write a lot, and so I would enter myself. People in journalism enter themselves in the awards. It's become, fabulously competitive, and that is fabulous, with an emphasis on diversity. And I think that the media awards, as it happens, were already there when 2 years ago James Beard pulled the plug on the restaurant awards, said nobody's even open now. It's a great time for us to really take stock and pull back. But the media awards had already been very much going in the direction of more regional diversity, local voices. There's a Jonathan Gold Local Voice Award. He was the great Los Angeles champion of street food. Fabulous, only Pulitzer Prize winning critic. But in any case, media awards are terrific. They're awarded earlier this year, and restaurant awards were just awarded Monday night.
By the way, for those who are not familiar with this is like the Oscars or the Tonys.
Yeah, it is.
Of the
It's a
food
very
world.
big deal.
So I didn't know you'd won 6. That is
That is really impressive.
Impressive.
And Tiffany Faison is throwing out the first pitch at Fenway.
Tomorrow at Fenway
Tomorrow.
for Pride
so
Month.
That's pretty cool.
And here's another thing I have to say about Tiffany. She is going to get many Beard Awards during her career.
I agree.
She's always going to be recognized, and she's got a great career.
Okay, so let's move from here to the Hudson Valley and the travails of small farmers, family farmers, and others. What is the obstacle they are facing to continue or expand their wonderful work?
There are so many obstacles to young farmers who want to get land, and getting land and finding a way to buy it is what has been nearly impossible for years and years. So in Western Massachusetts, there's the Carrot Project, which has tried to help farmers get land. There's Greenhorns in Upper New York State, right across the line. There's Glenwood, which is quoted in this recent story in the New York Times. The New York Times focused on the Hudson River Valley because it's one of the places where property values skyrocketed during the pandemic, 62% rise in housing and property values during the pandemic, because so many New Yorkers dream of this beautiful green place to live. Happened in Vermont too, that we read a lot. So young farmers who already were extremely challenged being able to afford any of the land, what they've had to do for decades now is rent, but very few options to own or buy. Now it's even worse. And the Times did really terrific reporting around the Hudson River Valley. And, there are a bunch of rich property owners who say, I'm going to try it out for a year. Why don't you, young person who wants to be a farmer, come and take my land for a year. I'll give you a good rental, and I'll see if I like the noise and the smell. That's not going to be cost effective for a young farmer. They have to have 3 to 5 year timeline before they can figure out whether the equipment they buy, the animals they buy, the prices they're able to charge at farmers markets are able to pay off. And so these owners have no idea that farms smell. And they are noisy, and the noise and the smells are not at the discretion of some serf-like tenant farmer who can make things beautiful on the weekends for the rich homeowners. It takes its own rhythm and time, and farms are messy. They're beautiful, but they're messy. So there's this very bad, and I think one of the people called the local farmers market serfdom with pretty views and nice labels.
Yeah, it's amazing how the exodus from these big cities, including from Boston during the pandemic, right? But New York, that was supposed to just go underwater, hasn't exactly gone underwater. Everybody seems to have come back now, even if they're going to try to get away for the weekends up the Hudson.
Right. I sent this article to a friend of mine whose sons have just started a farm in Hudson River Valley and said, "Do you have opinions?" He said about 5 million opinions, but one of them is they had been tenant farmers in Martha's Vineyard, and they said farming in Martha's Vineyard is everything in this article, but worse and more expensive. And one of the interesting criticisms that I have to follow up is that these nonprofit organizations that are helping young farmers find their matchmaking between property owners who want tenant farmers and young farmers who want to learn to farm. But they're snapping up land by raising money, and that's also keeping it out of the hands of young farmers. It's a big problem.
So, Corby Kummer, first it was toilet paper, then a bunch of other things, then baby formula.
Tampons now.
Oh, tampons. Well, tampons and sriracha. What is the problem exactly with, I guess, the most popular hot sauce in the United States? Is that true, or is that hyperbole? I think it is.
I think it's hyperbole, but during the 2010s, if you might recall, there was a severe shortage of chili peppers. Again, it was nature. There were droughts. Weather conditions left the one company, which is He Fong Foods, if I'm pronouncing it right, which is the maker of the famous sriracha sauce. So there are a couple of problems here. First of all, that people become too hung up on one brand name of sauce, and they think that's the only good hot sauce. There's plenty of hot sauces out there. But sriracha became, and still is, a cult object. And so when there's any disruption, people think it's the end of the world. The world is no longer safe for hot sauce lovers. It really is safe. There was a California Department of Health shutdown of 30 days, also in 2013, when it seemed like the world was going to come to an end. But recently, it's a pause production from this one company which can't get chili peppers. Okay, eat something else, but wish well to all the other places that are having problems because of climate change and finding sufficient quantities of the vegetables and crops they need.
Here's my guess, considering your insensitivity to the sriracha-deprived sufferers, is you don't like sriracha. Is that a safe assumption? Tell the truth.
You know, I'm not at liberty to say, but I
Okay.
We're talking to Corby Kummer, our food guy, and 6-time. Did you know he'd won 6
No,
James
I did
Beard
not. I know he's a great writer.
6
and I know he's
James
a great
Beard
editor.
Award.
I did not know he had
Yes, he
won
is.
6 times. We are all humbled by that, Corby Kummer. So the Globe has a Rhode Island section, and they have done a lot of writing recently about these great places to go in Rhode Island to have dinner. I was telling Jim, I was just down at a wedding in Rhode Island in Bristol, and every time I go to Rhode Island, which I go to a lot because I have a lot of family that lives there, almost everything in Rhode Island is on the water. You know, almost everything is on the water. And these restaurants, a lot of them are on the water, and they sound fantastic. Tell us.
I have a lot to say about Rhode Island. One of it is, we didn't talk about how James Beard mostly has favored Portland, Maine for years because it was the hot national yuppie rising artisan food scene, which it still is, and it's great, and I love going to Portland. But Rhode Island is undiscovered and has great restaurants and diners, and that's the next hotspot. I'm predicting it here, and the fantastic Globe reporting. There was a piece by Amanda Milkovich,
it's great,
who went to classic diner after classic diner, and I'm salivating just looking at the pictures of these 1940s and 50s diner. We all know and love the Town Diner in Watertown. There are diners around Boston that we go to and love just for the retro appeal of it, but the number of them with preserved interiors as well as exteriors in Rhode Island really just floored me looking at the pictures. And the way Jim recently went on a hamburger crawl because he's too suggestible, and he saw a list of 12 and he had to immediately go out and get 5. I've decided I have to go on a diner crawl to Rhode Island based on this terrific Globe piece.
Did you also see, speaking of, this is not Rhode Island, but a corollary piece was that Worcester was the diner manufacturer capital of America for decades,
Didn't
apparently?
know it. I've heard of the Miss Worcester Diner, but I didn't know that they were building them there for decades.
Yep, and there are survivors in Rhode Island and there are survivors in Massachusetts. But I think one of the Rhode Island has a plaque saying the world leader, the Sterling Streamliner, was built 1941 by the J.B. Judkins Company of Merrimack, Mass. That is, when you look at that modern diner, it is fabulous.
So
Called the
tell
Modern.
us, so what is the food critics' take on food in diners generally? I mean, lots of people think it's going to be just kind of, not very good. It's going to be mashed potatoes and meat with lots of gravy.
Corned beef hash and
Yeah,
poached eggs.
that's right.
Fabulous. Go ahead, Corby.
And pies.
I think that it is like short order American food, fast food at its finest. I'm always amazed by the length of diner menus, pages and pages of stuff coming out from the same tiny kitchen. And to me, it's like, clown cars in a Volkswagen. It's how do they get all that stuff out of those tiny kitchens?
Yeah.
And I recognize that it's variations on the same themes, that there's not that many ingredients they have to stock. But to me, it's always like a magic trick, and it's a miracle that all this food can come out. So I'm not there to judge the food. I'm there to have like pancakes or hash browns and eggs, or a grilled corn muffin with butter. There's nothing better in the world.
That's great.
And that is a diner specialty.
Well, I love diners, but the thing that I love the most, when I go to a diner, a couple of swigs of sriracha, and that is
It's
really
irreplaceable, Jim.
in all seriousness, though, Marjorie asked you about the food. You won't remember this because my memory is bad. Marjorie's is really bad.
Very bad.
We spend a week in New Hampshire, our shows, both of our shows, the week before the presidential primary every 4 years. We went to the diner.
A diner?
We met this woman at the hotel who was a young woman who owned is it called the Red Arrow Diner
Oh,
in New
yes.
Hampshire?
It
The
was
Red
great.
Arrow
It
Diner
was
in
great.
Manchester
Yep.
that is beyond fabulous. And while the food was really good, it had about the best corned beef hash. I mentioned this a minute ago.
packed.
Johnny's Diner in Newton has the best corned beef
very
hash
good.
in America, I would argue. But it's not just the food, it's the feel of a diner. And you, I don't know if I mentioned, 6 times James Beard Award winner, so obviously you're pretty masterful with the words. There is a feel about a diner that's as important as the food. Am I not right about that? And what is
I
that
think
feel?
it's genuine Americana, and the idea of, nothing will match, unfortunately, the lunch counters that had the same swivel seats and
I
fountains
know.
are now
Yeah.
I always think of segregation when I
Yeah.
think of those. But I don't have that association with diners. I just have pure love of really greasy plastic coated menus. Another one is Moody's in Waldoboro, Maine, where you get the refrigerator magnets that we always had.
Love that.
Diners are a classic part of the American landscape, and I think their food is terrific. Not just hash, but eggs.
Yeah, by the way,
potatoes.
I got the wrong city. I was close. I had the right state. Red Arrow Diner, thank you to one of my colleagues, is in Nashua, not Manchester. And did you know it's celebrating its 100th anniversary this year, which I was unaware of.
That diner that's been down next to South Station has been there for years and years and
Is that
years
the Blue
too.
Diner? Not
I
Blue.
forget what
What's
it's
it called?
called, but that's been there. That's
But
been
listen,
there
for
forever.
anybody listening who's got a spare $135,000,
What do you get?
buy one of the classic diners in the Rhode Island piece that's up for sale. They want somebody to preserve it and take it to the next level of improving the food and getting staff for it. It's a beauty from I think 1947. I think it's the West Side Diner. And you've got, I could be naming it wrong, but if you've got $135,000, pick up that glow piece and go buy a diner.
Well, you know what you can do with $135,000? You can either buy that diner or you can buy 1/8 of a parking space on Beacon Hill. That's
Or 1/4 of an acre in Hudson River Valley farmland.
Exactly right. We're talking to Corby Kummer.
Did we mention all the other places in Rhode Island
No, you
that the
didn't.
Globe talked about too? This was a great headline. How to eat through Southern Rhode Island in a single weekend. And again, it talked about these places, lots of them on the water, where you can go and have, wonderful scallops, rolls, seafood crepes, mimosas, and Bloody Marys.
Aren't you a huge Southern Rhode Island fan?
Well, I've been up
thought-
to Block Island a few times, and the Southern Rhode Island has these great towns named Galilee. One of these places is located in Galilee, Georges of Galilee, where you could see Block Island, and you could take the ferry from there to go to Block Island. So I'm just a big fan of Rhode Island because, as you mentioned before, it is kind of undiscovered. I'm always amazed that people would go to Cape Cod, which is really crowded now, when they can go to Southern Rhode Island, the beaches in Southern Rhode Island. I mean, I just drove by the other day, Roger Williams College, which is on the one side of the Mount Hope Bridge. all the dorms are on the water. You're sitting for 4 years with these spectacular views of the ocean for miles around, and that's what you get in a lot of Rhode Island, including.
I have to chime in. I'm amazed that people go to Maine when the landscape along southern Rhode Island, in Wakefield and
Watch Hill,
and
Westerly.
Watch Hill and
Yep.
Jamestown,
Yep.
it's unearthly beautiful, and it's as beautiful or more than anything in New Hampshire coast or Maine coast.
Yeah,
So-
Narragansett, the beaches in Narragansett are
Are
spectacular.
we going to name every town in Rhode
Well,
Island
just,
or no?
it's just we should all, Squamicut.
Okay, so Corby Kummer, we started a discussion we're going to continue after John King about eating alone. Before it was inspired by a piece in the Atlantic, I think, about eating alone for different reasons, which we'll get to in a second. But the first part of this, are you an eating alone out kind of advocate? I am. Marjorie is not.
Oh, eating alone at a bar is one of life's most satisfying occupations. I was in a lot of Boston restaurants over the weekend, and the number of people I saw either happily with a book or sitting at a bar alone and looking like there was nothing else they would rather be doing, I found really striking. The level of contentment, not artificially looking up as if they have a friend coming. There was none of that. There was, I'm happy to be here by myself. This is a great thing.
That was brilliant.
Hold
The
on.
looking for a friend that isn't coming.
Well, that's what
brilliant.
I feel, that I have to be
That is
looking for a
great.
friend who's coming and they just have shown up later. They stood me up or something. But I'm surprised you were talking about people looking at books. All I see anybody looking at are their
Is their
phones.
phone. Well,
I mean, they're not looking at books.
Well,
They might be
you're reading a book
reading
and-
they might be reading, I suppose. But if you were reading, you'd probably be reading on your Kindle, not
Hey,
your
we're in Boston.
phone.
People read books still.
Okay, so Corby, we're going to discuss that aspect of eating alone. The piece in the Atlantic, it seemed to me, was pretty much written about the pandemic, when people were forced to eat alone, people having some eating issues. This hashtag, Eat With Me, which apparently was huge, particularly on TikTok. A Korean phenomenon called, I hope I pronounced it right, mukbang, which is a combination of eating and broadcast kind of thing. Could you lay out the theme of this Atlantic piece for us?
During the pandemic, these mukbang Korean videos of people just eating a meal, often a quite hearty meal, exploded. They were all over the internet, and for a while they were like the most viewed videos on all of the internet. It was a surprising, provocative phenomenon, but it was also helping the idea of isolation and loneliness during the pandemic. And the writer, an associate editor, I don't know, named Morgan Ome at The Atlantic, wrote a beautiful piece about not just the loneliness and isolation, but actual mental health problems exacerbated by the pandemic among people who had already had eating disorders or on the verge of eating disorders as adolescents, meaning binge eating or not eating. There's something very encouraging and therapeutic about having somebody explain, here's what I'm eating tonight, here's its nutritional content and why it's good, here's the amount that I should be eating, come eat with me, I'm going to do it. These work. They're therapeutic, they don't cost anything, and they help people with eating disorders to regularize their eating habits in a really helpful way. It's a tremendously thoughtful article by this young woman who now is still watching Netflix, reading books, and scrolling through TikTok during it. But these Eat With Me videos really helped her stabilize her own health during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, I was looking at some of these Eat With Me videos, and they are kind of fascinating. You had one woman with a big bowl of ramen, a couple of eggs on top of that. Then you had another one with an In-N-Out burger, who was talking about the, I mean, I don't know if she was just describing how much she loved the In-N-Out burger with the ketchup, and everyone should take a big bite of this massive cheeseburger and telling you what's inside it and stuff like that. So, and quite elaborate preparations for their Eat With Me videos.
So a lot of my students at the Tufts School of Nutrition Science and Policy, thank you, are writing about mindful eating and intuitive eating, which are two very fashionable currents right now. They're also controversial, the idea that you eat when you want. But fundamental tenets of both are part of this Eat With Me video phenomenon, which is you slow down and you pay attention to what you're eating. You don't just gulp it while doing something else and sort of denying yourself that you're actually eating, which is part of the binge eating phenomenon. You have the patience and attention to pay attention to it and like it. And by force, if you're matching the pace of somebody who's on a video, you are slowing down. And that's going to increase our favorite word, satiety, Jim. And it's just going to increase, just to stabilize a better relationship to food.
Well, there's also, we've had this discussion with you in the past, we're out of time. There's the slow food movement, which my older daughter is a part of, by the way, where people consciously eat more slowly, not just for digestive purposes, but for purposes of joy. I want to let you know before you go, because I feel sort of a little outgunned here. You may have won 6 Beard Awards. As Marjorie knows, I don't talk about this a lot. I won Most Improved Camper at Camp Anabar, not 1, but 2 years in a row, Corby Kummer.
Yeah. I think your next career is, I'm going to put you up for Eat With Me Awards.
Thank you. Believe me, I'd win every one of them. Hey, Corby Kummer, it's great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks,
as always.
Corby.
And you.
We've been speaking with our food man, Corby Kummer, Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a senior editor at The Atlantic, and, as you just pointed out to us, Jim, we won't forget it, a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy. Up next, we're going to talk with John King from the CNN Boiler Room on the January 6th hearings, the cancellation of tomorrow's hearing, the bipartisan gun possible deal, and much more. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
Change comes in many shapes and sizes, and each of us has the potential to be a changemaker. It takes motivation, determination, and sometimes the right timing. At this month's Stories from the Stage, our storytellers share their tales of rising to the challenge and bringing change when it was needed most. Join us at our Brighton studios on Thursday, June 23rd at 6:30 p.m. for a live, in-person taping of Stories from the Stage, Changemakers. Tickets at gbh.org/events.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Tanglewood. This summer at Tanglewood, you can enjoy the Boston Symphony Orchestra, Boston Pops, guest artists, and more in the Berkshire Hills. Details and performance schedule at tanglewood.org. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Joined now on Zoom by CNN's John King. He's the chief national correspondent there and host of Inside Politics, which airs weekdays at noon. Good afternoon, John King.
Good afternoon. Busy Tuesday.
Oh my gosh, very, very busy Tuesday. So we've been talking about this all day, talking, of course, about the January 6th hearings. There's Benny Thompson, the chairman of the hearings, is basically said that they're not concerned about whether there's going to be any, I'm paraphrasing, but criminal indictments or referrals to the Department of Justice. And other members of the committee have said different things. So what is the deal? I mean, if we get to the end of these hearings and it looks like we have crimes being committed and a conspiracy there, what does happen?
Well, the committee, after doing some really deep digging and some meticulous investigative work, seems to be in a period of at least a brief communication confusion, if you will. Benny Thompson, the chairman, last night said that's not our job. The question was, are you planning to have specific written criminal referrals to the Justice Department? Will you write a memo saying we think X broke this law, here's the evidence, and you send it over? He says that's not our job. And then several members of the committee, including the Republican Vice Chair Liz Cheney, immediately pushed back. Some saying, yes, it is our job. Others saying, well, if we have the evidence at the end of this, then it's certainly our job. So there's clearly a disagreement, at least how to speak about this among the members. Someone close to Chairman Thompson told me his point really was he doesn't want to put the cart before the horse, and he wants to get through the public hearings, and so that people can't say they've already decided. They want to get through it first and lay out the evidence. We'll see how they clear that up. There's also, Marjorie, there was supposed to be a hearing tomorrow that has now been postponed. Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, who we heard a lot from yesterday, said the reason was there were some technical issues, essentially producing all the video we see at the hearing. Then we know we work in the business, that takes time. Does it take that much time when they had these hearings planned for weeks? I think that was a little tad suspicious, or at least curious. So she said technical issues, and then another member of the committee, Pete Aguilar, said they just wanted to wait to give what we heard yesterday time to sink in. So again, they've done very laudatory investigative work, very thorough investigative work. They're having a bit of a communication consistency issue at the moment.
Getting back briefly to this referral issue, I'm not buying what Chairman Thompson's colleagues, or at least other people who know his mindset, are selling. If he intended to say, John King, we don't make decisions about what we're going to do at the end of the hearing until the end of the hearings because we haven't had all the evidence out, then why didn't he just say this directly? It seemed to me he was much closer to saying that's not our business. We don't do that kind of thing. Am I wrong about that?
That's what it sounded like. I don't read minds, like you can't read minds, but that's sure what it sounded like, that he didn't think he said that's not our job. That's a direct quote from the chairman. So, obviously we know from our reporting that the Attorney General is watching. We know from our reporting that the Justice Department has reached out to the committee for some of its evidence and asking that it get to see some of these depositions. There's actually been attention there. The committee says, well, maybe when we're done, but you have to wait. We're in the middle of our work product. So this could be a debate that has no meaning in the end, if you will, if the Justice Department is watching and processing the information. But it does carry some stature. Republicans will say it does not, because Republicans are attacking the legitimacy of this committee. But this is a legally formed select committee of the House of Representatives, and it certainly does carry some gravitas if it comes on official stationery. As opposed to I saw it on television, or then the Justice Department had to request the document. So there's a little bit of a nudge if there's an actual referral and they stack the evidence for you and good lawyers put that together. But I think you're right, Jim, that the language was pretty strong. I think, so let's see the next 24 or 48 hours and see if anybody's language on this issue changes. I suspect it will.
John, one last question about the hearings. We asked your occasional colleague, Juliette Kayyem, earlier this morning, have any Republicans who heretofore had been all trumped up and unwilling to say anything was done wrong by the president or his people around January 6th and since and into the future, and the only one she could cite was the governor of Arkansas this weekend, Asa Hutchinson. Is he the outlier? Is there anybody else who's saying, I've heard concerning things and I want to hear more?
I have not seen anybody get in front of that. Even former Massachusetts Governor Romney, now Utah Senator, Senator Romney, said that he hasn't learned anything new, that he's learned a lot of details and sort of the subtext and how many people were in the room, or a lot of the color and connective tissue. But he says he said in his view he has yet, and he said he would keep watching and listening, but he says he's yet to hear anything new. I disagree with that, in the sense that we did know the broad brushes of this, but the power of this story is who's telling it.
Exactly right.
Who's telling it? This is Donald Trump's daughter and Donald Trump's son-in-law and Donald Trump's attorney general and Donald Trump's campaign manager and Donald Trump's campaign lawyer and Donald Trump's deputy White House counsel. This is Team Trump presenting a very damning picture of Donald Trump. But Jim, you raise a critical point. I don't want to ramble on too long, but there is a competition among House Republicans to rush to defend Donald Trump, even after what we've heard at the first two hearings. And we know there's more to come. How can that be? Just think about that.
I don't know.
Think about that. The president of the United States was told something. He continued to repeat the lie. He continues to this day to repeat the lie and to tell some people he thinks he deserves to be reinstated. And members of his party and candidates in his party, again, there are primaries today. There's a candidate for Nevada Secretary of State, the person who would count the votes, who is propagating the big lie. There's accountability for Trump and his team for what happened on January 6th. That is important for history, and it's important for potential legal issues, and it's important politically. But the cancer is in the body of the Republican Party, and it is everywhere. It is everywhere.
We don't know yet, but is there any sense at all? I mean, 20 million people that tuned into the first hearing, that's not nothing. that this may have impacted people who are on the fence, regular Joe and Jane voters?
It's a great question, Marjorie, and I don't think we know the full picture yet. And in my brain, I've sort of said, all right, let's get to the end of these hearings. But I do think the fact that a significant number of people, not mind blowing, but significant, Trump Trump impeachment hearing numbers in that ballpark, millions of people are watching. I do think that's the question. To the point I was just making about Republican candidates or elected Republican officials or Republican consultants, some of whom continue to work for candidates. Bill Stepien, the Trump campaign manager you heard yesterday, you might hear that and say, oh, he knew it was wrong. He told the president, you're lost. There's no recount. So he won't have anything to do with this in the future because he knows how toxic it is. No, he's actually the consultant for Liz Cheney's opponent in Wyoming. He's the consultant for Lisa Murkowski's opponent in Alaska, two Trump-backed challengers who propagate the big lie. And so this has not been cured yet or reformed in the party. Might it be all that, we're in mid-cycle. This is happening mid-political cycle, which is going to make it harder for people. It's just human nature. I'm not saying it's not the right thing to do, to just raise their hand and say, wow, am I wrong? Right? You don't see that a lot in politics anyway.
Yeah.
Or wow, I'm done with this. Wow, have I learned? You don't see that a lot in politics anyway. I wish we did. You don't see a lot of it in life. It's human nature, I guess, to try to wait till the last possible minute. But hopefully out of this, Marjorie, those seeds get planted. But I see no evidence at the moment.
So we're talking to John King. John, we can avoid the argument that's going to go on for a long time on guns about whether or not this tentative compromise, which includes 10 Republicans, is enough, is something better than nothing to at least break the logjam that's existed for decades. But will something better than nothing actually materialize, or does this have great potential to unravel between concept agreement and execution's a poor choice of words, and the actual drafting and voting?
I think it has the potential. I don't know the size, the scope of that potential. The lead Democrat, Chris Murphy, was on CNN this morning. He said they're making good progress. You've heard some rumblings in the Senate about the price tag. This is going to cost tens of billions of dollars. Some people say, 15, 16. Other people say maybe more than that.
Really?
Because the mental health piece of it, especially assistance to the states, is expensive. So there've been some grumblings about the price tag. They're looking for what they call offsets, take money somewhere else in the budget to try to pay for it. Everybody I've talked to in the Senate says yes, significant questions. They think they can still work it out. And you've heard some grumblings in the House, interesting policy questions. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for example, actually says she needs to see the language of this expanded background checks to look at juvenile records. She says in communities like hers, people have juvenile records, and then you try to get them on the right track. And would it send the wrong signal if you're going back into those records? And I don't think I'm not saying she's blanket opposed to doing it. I think she wants to see under what circumstances do you look at the juvenile records. So there are going to be some questions here. I would keep it on the optimism side of the meter, but think about the conversations we've had the last 5 or 6 years about getting things done in Washington, the past 20 years about getting things done in Washington. Be skeptical until it's done. But the people most closely involved remain optimistic.
We're talking to John King from CNN.
Piece in the New York Times, I think it was Sunday, John King, talking about talking with Democrats, including David Axelrod, who was a big close aide to Barack Obama, about President Biden running again. It was pretty critical. What'd you make of that?
It is interesting because so much of this has been going on quietly.
Yeah.
And then it popped up publicly. Is the president, he would be 82 years old in 2024. And is he up to running again? Is it, or even if he's up to running, is that the right thing for the country? Is it time for some generational change? To have Democrats talking about it publicly is quite interesting. There are a number of pieces of that. Number one, the White House says he fully intends to run. Now, of course, they're going to say that, right? Of course, they're going to say that. The second Joe Biden says, I'm not planning to run for re-election, is the second he loses a ton of political capital, and he doesn't have a ton at the moment anyway because of inflation, the economy, and his approval rating. So that would be a fool's errand to say now in the middle of the midterm campaign in 2022, oh, I'm done. I'm not going to run for re-election. I'm not saying he's thinking of not running it. Right now, every indication is he wants to. But he doesn't have to make that decision for at least another year, barely 2 years. Since you're the incumbent president, you could push it back some. But to have Democrats talking openly about it is interesting. There are a number of Democrats who privately are wandering around trying to meet the right people, raise their profile just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case he doesn't run. There will not be a Harris coronation if Biden does not run. But it's interesting because this question is bubbling out there. Bernie Sanders was asked about it, and he said he would, under no circumstances, run a primary campaign against Joe Biden. And if Joe Biden runs, he would support him 100%. It's a part of it is political theater, but this is a legitimate issue because Joe Biden would be 82, and if Donald Trump were the Republican nominee, I think he'd be 78 or 79. So I just think people are living longer. People are working productively longer. Modern medicine is a miracle in our lives. But is it a fair question? Do they understand the technology that is changing everything we do, as well as maybe a younger generation candidate for president? Is he a little slower in his step, whether it's Trump or Biden you're talking about? I think these are the question is there, whether I think it's legitimate or not. I was about to say, I think it's a legitimate question. Who cares what I think? It is out there. This conversation is out there, not just in Washington and elsewhere, but we'll see where it goes.
We had David Gergen here the other day, another colleague of yours who's written a book. He's answered the question and says all the octogenarians and would-be octogenarians should make room for the next generation. And I have to say, I'm with him. One last thing before you go, John, about Joe Biden. Saudi Arabia was a pariah to Joe Biden not too long ago, but apparently not so much of a pariah that he can't go there and visit with the leadership. What's the explanation for the turn of position?
The explanation is that presidents have to make tough decisions, and Saudi Arabia is a key player, whether the issue is oil, which is the number one concern right now. Can you get more oil into the system?
Yeah.
Therefore, gas prices might come down some. Saudi Arabia is a big player in the Arab world and in the region. Interesting this trip. Joe Biden's also going to go to the West Bank. Donald Trump ignored the Palestinians for 4 years, and Barack Obama kind of gave up on the Israeli-Palestinian stuff at the end because it wasn't going anywhere. He didn't believe there were two committed partners to peace. So I do think it is interesting. It reminds me in the Clinton campaign in 1992, Bill Clinton said he would not meet with the dictators in Damascus, and then he met with Hafez, the older Assad. Hafez al-Assad was in power in those days. Candidates say things in black and white. Presidents have to rule and govern in nuance. But it is particularly striking because Biden's language was so strong, about the murder of Khashoggi anyway, and the crown prince being responsible, and B, because Trump, was very close to the Saudis, even in that moment, right after as it happened. Trump was like, I don't care. And Biden's language was very, very strong. Pariah is nowhere near partner if you're trying to figure out what to do here. And Biden called him a pariah. So it's a hard box to get out of. And he's, they're getting hammered for it by a lot of people, especially the human rights community believes it's a green light. We talk about it sometimes in the political context. It's not sport. It's a tough call for the president. I get it. I've watched, Ronald Reagan he ran as an anti-communist. He met with Gorbachev. Good things happen because of that. Sometimes good comes of this. But Biden's going to have an eat your peas moment here for a month or so.
Speaking of being hammered, Jason Tatum is getting hammered. You may look at his, John, if you're not watching on YouTube, John has his head in his hands. So can they pull this off, or is it a wait till next year kind of experience, Dorchester boy?
They have in every one of these games showed us they have the talent to pull this off. And they have in the last 2 games gotten to the cusp of getting ahead by 3 games in this series, and then just decided to flip a switch and pretend they don't know how to play basketball. That's the striking part is they go from when they came back last night, you were watching near perfect basketball.
Yes.
And teammates and energy and enthusiasm, and then all of a sudden
Gone.
they just stop. I don't know how that happens. I I know they're exhausted. They have the talent to do it, but Golden State's a championship caliber team, and now they know they need just one. So they cannot go into those funks anymore if they're going to pull this off. They can, but oof.
An ominous comment by John King. John, it's good to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, John.
Take care, guys. Take care.
We've been speaking with John King from CNN. He's the chief national correspondent there and the host of Inside Politics, which you can catch weekdays at noon. We watch it every single day. You're listening to Boston right here, right in the studio here.
That is correct.
We're not in the studio now, actually. We're in the library, but we watch it in
that
both
is our
places.
studio at the
You're listening to Boston Public Library, Boston Public Radio,
Exactly.
89.7 GBH, and we are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. And now, by popular demand, or at least by Jim's demand, we're going to go back to the subject we were talking about before with our listeners. Jim is a big fan of eating alone. Are you? Apparently, we have a very passionate audience on this, Jim. We're getting all sorts of texts. You can call us or text us at 877-301-8970. You are again listening to Boston Public Radio.
Mama songbirds are stepping out on their mates, and lady orcas are just hitting their prime after middle age. I'm talking with zoologist Lucy Cook about her new book and how the real lives of females in the animal world upends our conventional stereotypes of what is natural for girls and women. That's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Mass Audubon, where you can get outdoors and experience wildlife sanctuaries across the state, from the Cape to the Berkshires. You can join today. The adventure starts at massaudubon.org. And Boston Children's Hospital, ranked the nation's #1 children's hospital by U.S. News & World Report, where families from Massachusetts and the world come for answers. bostonchildrens.org/answers.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back at the library on Friday. We started this conversation, as Marjorie said, a little bit earlier, and then we talked to Corby about it, but we want to get into it more deeply now. What is it about eating alone that's just, I don't know, a little bit mystical, whether you love it, like I do, and Corby does, or hate it, like Marjorie does? It's a powerful thing. Give us a call, text us 877-301-8970, or tweet us at BOS Public Radio. The one thing that was added to the conversation by Corby that I hadn't thought about is when you do go out and eat alone. When I was younger, I was much more anxious about eating by myself, sort of like you describe it. You know, people looking at you while you're alone, that sort of thing. And what I would always do, I'm embarrassed to admit, is exactly what Corby said. Every once in a while, when you're feeling particularly self-conscious, you turn around to the door.
That's right.
As if somebody's about to join you.
Exactly. Or you look at
and
your watch.
I was just going to say, you look at your watch.
Yep.
And so that, I'm not exactly the most confident person out in the world, but I feel I get such joy out of that experience, having a drink, having something to eat out at a restaurant by myself. It separates you from the world in so many ways. Even though a lot of our texters say what they love about it most is it connects you to the world. People talk about eating at the bar so they can meet new people, not to have a relationship, but to have a conversation kind of thing. We want to know where you fall on this issue. 877-301-8970. Do you want to explain again why you have some concern about this?
Well, you know, I must be wrong, because we're getting a lot of texts from women who say they like to go to the bar and eat alone, that they have absolutely no problem of doing that, sitting at the bar, eating with strangers. Someone said their 25-year-old daughter does it all the time. Deborah from West Newbury says, I love dining in a restaurant. The food is gourmet. I enjoy the food more without distracting conversation. Betty from Sutton says she's eaten alone at various hotels and restaurants. She likes sitting at the bar. As I said before, talking to the bartender. Met lots of interesting people that way over the years. I guess because I would feel, and maybe this was when I was younger, I would just feel like, what's wrong with me? You're sitting there by yourself. And also when I was younger, you know, you don't want to get hit on. I mean, that doesn't happen to me much anymore, Jim, but it used to in my younger days. And it seemed like an invitation for someone that you didn't want to come up to you. So maybe that's part of it. But apparently I'm old-fashioned, because lots of people here are saying they love eating alone.
I would say almost everybody. Would you not say?
Yep.
Almost
Lynn is
everybody.
very upset that we're talking about Rhode Island. She says she doesn't want, the locals are trying to keep down low. Yeah, they don't want all us invading from Boston and Massachusetts. Anyway, Teresa, we don't have Teresa. She's still getting vetted by our calls. We'll get her in a second. But so maybe I'm wrong. I feel funny about it.
Well, you're not wrong. Whatever there's no, I hate the expression,
Yep.
there's no right or wrong. Well, there is no right or wrong.
Okay.
It's just a wonderful, joyous kind of thing to be by. You don't have to worry about anybody else if you don't want to talk to any. I mean, don't you think you're skillful enough at this stage of your life that if you don't want to talk to somebody next to you, unless they're a drunk, falling off.
No.
By the way, you don't have to sit at the bar.
I'm not skillful enough.
Excuse me. Then sit at a table for two by
Yeah,
yourself.
and you know what?
No one's going to sit down at the chair across from you.
You don't think so?
When did that happen?
It happened many years ago, but
It
it did
did?
happen. Yes, it did.
By the way, one of the
Absolutely.
greatest columns,
And then I couldn't
Marjorie,
get rid
ever-
of the person.
One of the greatest columns you ever wrote, and I'm only bringing this up because you've talked about, well, I used to have people, whatever. Marjorie wrote a column about being young and walking down the street and having the construction workers whistle at you. And then when you were 30, when they whistled at you, you walked across the street. And then finally, I think you wrote it when
At
you were
40,
50 or something.
yeah.
You talked about how you made sure you walked right in front of the construction workers.
And hoped one of them looked up from his lunch bucket.
That was
exactly.
real, I don't know if I knew you then. That was one of the best columns I ever read. It was brilliant.
Teresa from Waltham, thank you for calling.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi there.
Hey.
I've called a few times. I love you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I've been doing this for years. On the other hand, if I did the tango, it would be called the Tango for One. But I think a couple things. I really enjoy it. It's great for people watching.
Great.
But you have to pick your moment. You don't go in the thick of things if you're by yourself, because you're putting strain on the wait staff. The other thing is be a much better than average tipper, because a lot of wait staff don't like a party of one because it's cutting back on their income.
Well, particularly if you're sitting at a table rather than a bar seat, because you're taking up 2 spots by yourself.
Exactly.
That is a
Well,
brilliant addition to the discussion.
Well, that's the part about pick your moment.
Good for you.
Don't make yourself part of the problem. Make yourself part of your own enjoyment and part of the solution.
Teresa, beautiful spirit. Thank you for calling. We appreciate it.
Listen to this. This is a woman. She gets what I'm talking about. She says, I love eating alone, but as a woman, sometimes weird dudes won't leave you alone. I actually had a guy ask if I was a serial killer when I denied his request to sit with me, because otherwise, how could I possibly have resisted his charms, right? I think that she and I think the same way. You spend time eating alone people are thinking you're a loser, or that some creepy person is going to come over, and then you're going to have to worry about how to get rid of them. I think
Did you see what Greg from Rhode Island sent a text to
yes,
you?
Yes, he did. He sent a
said,
text.
Marjorie, I don't think Jim is a fan of eating alone by choice. 877-301-8970. Sarah in Salem, you're on Boston Public Radio. Sarah, hold on 1 second. Marjorie's amused. It must be at my expense.
I'm amused. No, this is a Secretariat text.
Oh, what is it?
This is,
I
eat so much by myself. I'm like a tremendous machine.
Exactly.
And of course, that was what the sports announcer said when Secretariat was winning the Belmont Stakes in 1973. He is moving
like a tremendous machine.
The old thing, Marjorie, they designed a mug, our colleague Zoe and our colleagues.
I love it. It's my prized possession.
And it says on it, Boston Public Radio, a picture of Secretariat about to win the Belmont, and it says 0 days since last Secretariat mentioned.
Right.
Actually, in this case, it's 0 hours since Secretariat mentioned.
You can never have enough Secretariat mentions, as far as you ask me.
In Salem, you're on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for calling. Hi.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm so surprised I got through.
We're glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you. I love eating alone. I've always loved eating alone when I go out, and I don't want to talk to people. I just want to sit by myself and read and have a good meal and be alone for a little while.
And why do you like it? What does it do for you?
It's nice to step away from my household and just have some quiet time and kind of observe the rest of the world. And I really don't like it when people talk to me when I'm there. That is something that does bother me.
Yeah,
it happens
okay.
a lot as a woman.
Okay, how do you handle that, Sarah? That's what I want to know.
Well, in my younger years, I used to politely talk to people, but there was a few incidences, where people are too forward and they hit on you. So now I just politely kind of end the conversation, don't engage, all of that.
Yeah, well, it's hard, though, because I spend the whole time in anticipation of that happening, and I can't enjoy what I'm eating.
Well,
and
Sarah
thinking
and
about
Marjorie,
what I'm going to say.
Can I give you a little advice, if I may? I'm
What's
not
that,
a
Jim?
woman, but you just turn to the person and say, you talk to me again, I'm going to call 911. I mean, don't you think that's... Sarah, that was a great call. Thank you for
it's difficult.
making it.
You don't want to be rude to people, though, Jim. You know what I mean?
877-301-8970. The people who've been in favor of this, who have called so far or texted, have captured the magic of the experience really beautifully. They really feel it, and I'm with them.
Well, we have one of our texters is saying, from your travel writer, Christopher Muther, who is with us all the time, he says he loves eating solo, and he says, or she says, I'm not sure if it's a man or woman, I'm doing this right now in San Juan.
Whoa.
Wow, we're getting listened to
We're
in Puerto
huge in Puerto
Rico. I'm
Rico.
very, very excited.
Mosey in Swampscott, you're on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for taking the call.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, this is a great topic. I felt so obligated to reach out. And, Jim, I got to say I agree with you. And for me, I'm in my 30s now, so I'm not super old. But back in my 20s and my late teens, my favorite thing to do was to go out to a new restaurant and treat myself to a nice meal, no distractions. And I think it was always about the reflection. being able to reflect on that moment and, skip ahead 10, 15 years later, I think about those times. I can't do that now. I got one 3-year-old. I got another kid on the way. There's no way in hell I can find the time to go out for myself and have a nice bite to eat. But I got to go back to what Marjorie was saying, and I do feel bad for women because I know my sister and my wife have dealt with this issue about trying to go out on your own. God forbid you can just sit there without some man coming up to you and assuming that you want to speak to him.
Okay, so how does your wife or sister handle this situation, Mosey? Do you know?
Well, I know that they're the type of girls that don't take any BS.
Yeah.
So they have no problem just telling them to go away. Nicely put.
Good for them. Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Well, Marjorie is not quite that type. I have a comment about Marjorie that if you start talking to Marjorie, tell me if this is true, Marjorie, and would like to talk to her for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours, you will have Marjorie for 4. Is that Mosey? Thank you for the call. Try it sometime.
I have been criticized for that many times, Jim. Many times.
It's not a criticism. That's not a criticism at all. You're an incredibly warm,
open
person.
But I shouldn't do that in some certain. I mean, I'm with someone, and I end up talking to somebody else the other side of me at the bar. It's not a nice thing to do. But you know something? When I was young, in college, I had an opportunity to go spend 6 months in England. And they have pubs there, and it's a whole different atmosphere. Lots of them are very family-oriented pubs. Yeah. And I remember you could go to those pubs even alone, and it was fine. It wasn't like a pickup kind of joint. There's a different atmosphere in bars in America, I think, for the most part.
You don't think? And by the way, I hope I'm not sounding unsympathetic to women who have the concern you do, because I don't mean to be. You don't think you can send the message out when you're sitting alone that you don't want to be bothered, you don't want to be spoken to, you don't want to strike up a conversation? I think you can. I really
convey that message.
Yeah, you convey that message.
I mean, it's a little bit different, Jim. You are a very big man.
I am a very big man.
I think it's very different.
You know what I also
very
do?
Big men.
You should try.
What's that, Jim?
And I have an extra one in my car. I have a large "Do Not Disturb" sign that I wear around my neck. By the way, you just string 877-301-8970.
This is from one of our staff, Zoe. She says she can confirm Marjorie's politeness evidenced by the time her parents came to the Boston Public Library and chatted until Jim had to be like, "Can you guys leave?"
I didn't say. Well, actually, I did say, "Can whatever."
Yeah, you're very good at that, Jim. You're very good at
no. I mean,
not making eye contact.
No, I mean, let me
That's
just say,
your motto.
in defense of myself, the problem was the show was about to start in about 30 seconds,
Okay.
and I thought you maybe should join me.
Denise from Manchester.
Hey,
Thank you
Denise,
for calling.
What's up?
Hey, how are you?
Excellent.
Fine, thank you.
All right. Well, I wanted to weigh in because I agree with Marjorie.
Thank you.
Why is that?
Yeah. Because I don't, when I go out to eat, I want to go out with people so I can enjoy, the meal and the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And, talking to friends. When I'm eating by myself out in a restaurant where other people are talking, I feel like uncomfortable.
Me too. Yeah, I do too. Absolutely.
But Denise, I understand that and I respect it. Don't you feel you're missing out on something? I mean, your ability to be free of whatever else you have in your life, not to talk to people. I mean, why are you making a face at me?
Because I think it's a totally different thing. Let Denise
go
go ahead.
Denise, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because my kids are up and out. They're older and they're they're on their own now, and so I have a lot of free time at home, and I love to eat by myself at home.
At home. Well, that's a different shtick. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Denise, thank you for the call. We appreciate it. And you don't like eating at home alone by either?
Well, I think it's interesting. Like someone like Denise likes it, and I think there are a lot of people I know who live alone. They've lived alone for a long time, and they have a regular sit-down meal for themselves.
So what do you make for yourself if you're alone at home?
I stand up and eat a sandwich. That's what I do.
What kind of living is that?
And I do it while I'm doing something else. You have a bite, you empty the dishwasher. If you bite, you put away the laundry, something like that. That's what I do.
So let me just be clear. So you're standing in your house doing
That's
laundry.
Right.
You make a boiled potato sandwich on white with butter, little pepper, little
something
salt.
Like that. Something like that.
I don't get that.
Well, and you're also much more into food than I am.
Well, I was just going to say, you know what it is? You don't enjoy, you see
I like
food
food.
as a nourishment thing.
I do.
As opposed to an experience.
I see food as when I'm hungry, I eat, and then when I'm not hungry, I don't.
I haven't been hungry in 37 years. That is not the criterion for eating. Joni in a car, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for your call. Welcome.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. I love you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
And I just want to tell you that I love eating alone, and I love eating by myself and eating with other people. And the reason is it's two completely different experiences.
That's true.
When I was in college a few years back, I used to love to go to a nice diner and do my homework, sitting at the table, read a few books. You know, it was great. Also, I found that when you go out and eat by yourself, there's so much more opportunity to conversate with other people. When you're by yourself, people will talk to you more. And I haven't had any bad experiences. I've only had wonderful experiences. Like I was at Scullers one night, and I was supposed to be on a date, and I was sitting at the table all by myself, and the people next to me were talking to me, and they said, you know, it's a great night. This is going to be a great show. I said, yeah. They said, are you by yourself? I said, yeah. I said, I had a date, but I was drunk up, which is like being stood up by a drunk.
Oh,
and,
no.
That's what happened.
Oh, no.
So the people actually paid for my meal.
Wow.
They were so sweet, and we talked the rest of the night, and then the other day I was at this beautiful cafe, and I was conversating with the people that worked in the kitchen.
I
And
love this.
I got my meal, and it was delicious, and the woman came out and brought me this beautiful homemade cookie.
You know, you are living the dream, Joni. This is exactly, you are describing exactly the kind of experience that I'm encouraging Marjorie to embrace.
Yes.
Joni, thanks for the call.
But there are some people like me. Mary from South Hamilton
What'd she
says,
say?
the last thing I want to do is go to a restaurant by myself. Marjorie, I agree with you. What could be better than a peanut butter sandwich on white bread in my own kitchen? I enjoy my own company, my own house. I'm by myself. I don't go to the movies by myself either. I love your shows. Thank you very much.
Do you go to the movies by yourself?
I've gone to the movies by
No
myself.
one's going to talk to you there, right?
Now, there are probably some mean people who would say that Jim Browdy is doing a lot of people a favor by eating alone. But I, of course, would not say that.
That's
a
Emil
good one.
in Marlborough.
That's a
Thank
good
you
one,
for
too.
your
That's a good
support.
one, too. And another texter says, I only eat alone during daylight saving time.
Can I tell you one other thing? You know what another thing that maybe to break you in? The key is don't do the bar, even though I love it. Do a table for two where no one is going to join you. Trust me. Do it outside, too. On a beautiful night, decide to go to a restaurant. Try it once at a table for two. Bring a book. You actually read hard copy books.
I
do
do
you
from
not?
time to time.
How
Yes,
great
I
would
do.
that be?
Yes, I do. Yeah, that's very nice. It's very nice.
Meaning she's not going to do it.
No, I'm just looking at other people who, who have had the same experience as I do, and Jim, we don't like it one little bit.
Okay, the show's over.
The show is over.
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much for tuning in today.
Thank you.
As always, there are not going to be any hearings even till
Not-
Thursday.
Thursday at 1 o'clock, we will bring them to you live. Yes, we
Thursday at
will.
1 o'clock, we bring them to you live, assuming they continue on Thursday. We have tomorrow, because there aren't going to be hearings, our medical ethicist, Dr. Kaplan, is going to be with us, Boston Globe business writer Shirley Young, and our tech guy, Andy Anatko. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Mackenzie Farkas, Rebecca Tauber, with additional support from Gina Orsino. Our engineer is John DeClaw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. And we want to thank our engineers here at the Boston Public Library, Rob Fagnet, Colin Cockrell, and Taya Modalisi. Jim, what's on TV?
Before I do that, one of the things we're going to talk about, Shirley, the news broke today. The Supreme Judicial Court, state's highest court, knocked the Uber Lyft independent contractor versus employee question off the ballot. The reason that matters is because it's one of the most central issues around whether someone is an employee or an independent contractor, and arguably would have been the single most expensive ballot question in the history of Massachusetts, as was its companion question in California. An interesting show tonight. Katie Turr, you all know from MSNBC and NBC, she has written a memoir about herself and her family. Her parents are legendary reporters and videographers in California. She tells this really raw story that is amazing.
About her dad.
About her father
Yes.
in particular, who's transitioned
Yes.
and her relationship. It's really an incredibly compelling book. We're also going to talk about what she thinks about the hearing. And the former president of Harvard, former secretary of the Treasury, Larry Summers, who apparently was the only person last year right about inflation exploding this year. We're going to see if he can do a little Nostradamus about the future as well. It's all tonight, Greater Boston at 7 o'clock.
I am Marjorie Egan.
I am Jim Browdy.
Thanks
Enjoy
again
your
for
mug,
tuning
by
in
the way.
today. Thank you for people that came down to the
Thank you
Boston
all.
Public
We appreciate
Library.
it. Thank you.
We hope you can tune in tomorrow, and meanwhile, I hope you have a great day.
See ya.